Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Roll call.
Mr. Arnold has an excused absence. Mr. Mason?
Here.
Ms. Snyder?
Here.
Colorado?
Here.
I'm not sure. Mr. Tarver?
Present.
And Ms. McKinley, school board rep, has an excused absence.
And we can proceed with the four of us. The four of us
I
with,
do believe so. With the four, we still have quorum.
Four is sufficient for a quorum. That's correct.
so the alternate will vote on this, correct?
Yes.
Orson, please. You vote on this, right? Gotcha. Okay.
Go ahead.
First, we'll do the approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, agenda is approved. And approval of the minutes from April 3rd of 2023.
Madam Chair, we just, on that first one, we just need a vote very quickly. You had a motion in a second. And just say, all those in favor
Now we
say
have to
aye.
vote.
Oh, yeah, sorry, approved. Didn't I say that?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, aye, is that right?
Yeah, just say, all those in
All
favor
those in
say
favor
aye.
say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's approved.
I move that we approve the minutes of the the April
April 3rd.
3rd meeting.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
And so those minutes and agenda are approved. We have no unfinished business, and so we'll start with the first new business, the Destination Downtown 2 North Atlantic Avenue large-scale site plan review. Okay,
And
so just to,
yeah,
this is a quasi-judicial.
it's a quasi-judicial item, so I'm going to go ahead and give a little introduction here. And this is for the benefit of the public as well. This item is a public hearing for review of a request for site plan approval. Any individual, including the applicant, staff, witnesses, or members of the public who plan to speak or offer testimony during the public hearing, would ask you to please rise and be sworn by the clerk.
Mr. Vost, does that include attorneys?
If you're planning to offer any evidence.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in these proceedings?
Yes.
You are sworn.
A site plan approval is quasi-judicial in nature, which requires our public hearing to comply with procedural requirements established in Florida law. Quasi-judicial proceedings are less formal than proceedings before a circuit court, but more formal than some other types of meetings and must follow basic standards of notice and due process. Decisions must be made based on competent, substantial evidence. Please note that only competent, substantial, fact-based testimony or evidence will be considered by the board in its deliberation and voting on this item. Pure speculation or mere opinion not based on competent facts cannot be legally considered by the board in weighing the appropriateness of the site plan. Lay testimony with fact-based support may be considered competent and substantial evidence. If you intend to speak, please keep this in mind when you do come forward. Please state your name for the record, and please state your name for the record. Madam Clerk, has this item been properly advertised?
Yes, this item was properly advertised and the record has documentation to that effect.
All right. At this time, if any board member has a conflict of interest that would prohibit them from voting on this item, I'd ask you to disclose it at this time. Anyone have a conflict? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on. Also at this time, if any board member has had any ex parte communications concerning this item, and just for the benefit of the public, ex parte communications are communications with members of the public, the applicant, or anyone concerning this item outside of this public hearing? Has anybody had any ex parte communications they wish to disclose at this time?
So I did a site visit to the area and went around some of the other parking areas as well. And I've had a couple conversations with residents and shared one email was shared with me on one of the residents' kind of notes on what they had to say.
I visited this site and also received an email and had a discussion with the resident.
Site visit.
I've been to the site and have had discussions with 2 residents.
Just done a site visit.
Any others? All right, thank you. At this time, I will go ahead and turn it over to staff to proceed with presentation of the item.
And just real quick, Mr. Clerk, as you're away, with the swearing in, just raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in these proceedings?
Yes,
You are sworn. Thank you.
thank you.
And just for the benefit of the board and for the public, we'll proceed with staff presentation, and then any questions for staff, and then presentation from the applicant. Any questions for the applicant, and then you can open it up.
Okay. For background information, the owner of Wave Development LLC, represented by OG Enterprise, is seeking a site plan approval for the subject property located at 2 South Atlantic Avenue, situated between North First Street and Minuteman Causeway. The property is zoned TC Town Center and has a future land use of redevelopment. The proposed construction is 77,981 square feet with a 5.5 level parking garage. The garage will contain 95 standard, 32 motorcycle, 30 compact, 5 ADA, 1 ADA van parking spaces. And the engineer of record is Andy Kirchhoff. The property is previously known as the Yin Yin Restaurant. And at this time, if you guys have any questions based on the planning board briefing, I'll be happy to answer those questions. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to the applicant. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. I noticed in the presentation by the applicant that they had a traffic engineer do a traffic study. And my question is did the city engineer do any sort of analysis of traffic, or did anyone on staff or as a consultant to the city do any kind of traffic analysis? And in connection with that same question, did the fire department do an analysis to assure that fire equipment could have access to this new building?
No, the city staff did not do any specific analysis. We accepted the applicant's engineer's analysis of the parking garage and access. That analysis will be done if this site plan is approved. The city staff and the traffic and fire will do an analysis at that time and make sure that everything is, fitting. But Randy did take a look at it. I spoke with him prior to him leaving, as well as I reviewed it for any traffic issues that may come up, and we didn't find anything that was substantial. This is a current driveway which was used previously for this parking area, so that was what was proposed as the best way to enter the building.
Okay, and my next question is there any requirement for bathroom facilities in a parking structure? I can't find anything about that in any of the codes.
No,
But does the city have any requirement?
no, not for a parking garage.
Would it be nice to have it?
There's several ways to look at that. So because the applicant didn't propose having a bathroom and it's not a requirement for the city, we didn't really talk about it at all.
The only reason I bring that up is because from what I've observed, the bathrooms in the city's parking structure get an awful lot of use. And I would assume that the same constituency that's using that parking garage would be using this parking garage as well. And when I was reviewing the plans, I was just wondering where people would go for bathroom facilities.
Yes, the city's garage is a public facility, and that's an amenity that they added into that public facility.
I have only two questions. So has the city, I understand you actually kind of answered one of it, that you guys haven't really looked into the traffic. The city hasn't. You went by with the city or with the applicant engineer?
Yes, competent engineer reviewed it, and he went over that again. This project took place, shaped prior to my coming on, so I did have a chance to talk to Randy about it. We reviewed it as well as far as the way that the garage would be entered and exited, and this was the best location for the entry.
Okay, was it factored in that oftentimes the street is closed for Friday Fest, the art show, the boat party coming up? Would we still be able to close the street, or would we be obstructing the gentleman from operating his business if we close the street?
That wasn't factored in. That's not something that we would normally review in a site plan review application, is those type of things. That would be something that would be worked out at the time with the applicant or, all of the businesses along that road.
Okay. And the only other question would be is, I know that it has come up at city council meetings, the city wanted to build another parking garage. Is this roughly the same capacity so that, it's nice that a private enterprise will address something the city has said we need? Is it roughly the same amount of spots of what the city thinks we need in the proposed second garage that was going to be built? Is it roughly an equivalent capacity?
I didn't have privilege to review the city's proposal for a parking garage, so I wouldn't be able to give you that information at this time.
Okay. I'm all set. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else have any questions?
That's for you, I guess.
All right, I'm gonna turn it over to you guys.
No, I can't see Mr. Tarver.
I can slide that.
That's okay, that's all right, I can just push it back.
Okay.
This is if you have questions, so I can show. Good evening, members of the Planning Board. My name is Kim Rozenka with the law firm of Lacey Lyons Rozenka here on behalf of Wave Developments, LLC, and OG Enterprises. Before you, you have the site plan. I know you have the entire 16 pages and the site plan with you. Ms. McCoy gave you an overview. Again, this is the old Yen Yen site. It's a 0.41 acre site. It's in a redevelopment zone, a town center zoning, and it is using an available entranceway on Minuteman Causeway. It is not going to use the alley on the north end, which it had used in the past, this property, and that was on the basis of what the city somewhat recommended, so you didn't have two entrances, so you would stop conflicts, and then you'd also stop conflicts with any of the other parking areas that are to the north at that location. I just wanted to briefly go through what was said. Also, too, three of you mentioned you had emails or conversations with members of the public. If they raised any questions or concerns, if you could let me know so we could try to address those as well. We haven't had the opportunity to see those emails. So if there's anything that they said that we can address, please let us know. Again, this is an allowed use. This is meeting the 45 height requirement by the city code. City Code 3-37 allows the extra 10 feet for parapets and things like that and elevator shafts. But we do meet the code. This is a bit of a confusing site because the elevations are different on Minuteman and on A1A. And so the basis of the code's requirements is the crown of the road. So if you have any questions about that, we can go through the numbers with you. But the staff has understood it. The engineer has provided the details, and it's on the page in your packet The next to last page, and then the elevation page shows those as well. It's a 5-floor parking garage. It says 5.5 level parking garage. It has met the city code. There will be more studies required, such as the fire department study and a full traffic study. Although a garage is a destination, it doesn't draw people to it. It's people that were already coming to the area, and making sure that people do have places to park instead of parking on people's front yards, which we've heard through many city council meetings that often people are parking where they're not supposed to park. So the site plan does meet the site plan requirement codes as mentioned by the staff report. It meets property line setbacks, loading spaces, landscaping, and everything required. A stormwater plan is discussed briefly in the site plan, and the engineer of record, Mr. Kerbach, is here if you have any questions. It will meet the low impact development standards as mentioned in the staff report. And it will provide a sign plan with the construction plans if this is approved. And regarding street closings, Mr. Tarver, whatever the city decides, that's something that's in the future. And so that's not really a consideration under the site plan. The site plan code says if you meet the standards, then applications should be submitted. It does still have to go to city council for approval. If you have any questions, Mr. Gall is here, as is Mr. Herbach. And again, if you have any questions, I just brought these, wasn't aware of what the setup would be, so we did bring these in case there were questions. With that, we'd ask approval of the site plan, or recommendation of approval.
Any questions on Orson? Go ahead.
I don't know if do you have any opinions, Mr. Gall, about the street closures, on how that could potentially impact your operations?
That's something that would.
We'd have to.
That's something that would need to be further discussed between staff and myself after site plan is approved.
Okay. And I would like to just offer a comment. I mean, thank you for doing this because, I mean, I think the residents win when a private individual will step in and provide a resource that's needed. I mean, the city has said we need more parking capacity, and it's nice to see you do this because I think the taxpayers and everyone wins when a private individual steps in versus us having to use our taxpayer dollars to bill it and have to maintain it and things like that. So, I mean, it looks nice, but I mean, I think that's my biggest concern is that, you know how many street closures we have. And I hate for that to hurt your business, that, you have to flush everyone out before 3 p.m. when they start closing streets, and then you'd have to reopen, of course, immediately after. And I just worry it's going to have a negative impact on your business, that's all.
So historically, on every Friday Fest, Street Fest, when the road is closed, it does hinder my business. I didn't say a word. Obviously, I would like it to resume. I am a member of the community myself. Sometimes I do go to those street fests myself as well. Historically, I also donated my parking lots to the art festival,
Right. Yeah.
to the boat races. I'm involved in the community, and I don't see why I need to stop that involvement after I have my parking garage. But obviously, that topic has not been discussed, nor the logistics of that topic either.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have any more questions.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board members? Go ahead, Mark.
Did you have a question? I'm still not straight on this height. I still would like it explained because what I'm seeing is a building height of 56 and a proposed elevation of 64.65, and I'm having trouble wrapping my head around that. And I know it has to do with the road, and I know the fact that the elevation of A1A is higher than the elevation of, actually, Atlantic is higher than Orlando.
If you look at A5-01, I think it's like the next to last page in the 16 page. Looks like this.
Got it.
If you look here, this is measured from the crown of the road. This
The
shows.
crown of which road?
This is the crown of A1A.
A1A going north, so it's Atlantic, or A1A south, which is Orlando?
It's,
It'd be north.
North, Atlantic, okay, so it's Atlantic.
so Atlantic.
All right.
I call them all A1A, I apologize. So the crown of the road is at 10.58. You see that number on the
Right.
right-hand side? And then the top of the tower, or, excuse me, the level 5.5 is 50, I can't read that. Oh, no, the top is 64.6, and we subtract the 64.6 from the 10.58, you're getting 45 feet.
Right, so basically what you're doing is you're using, even though the face of it is really on Atlantic, which is A1A north, you're using the back of it.
No, we're using the east side of it, yeah. We're using
The height is measured from the front of the road.
the crown of the road adjacent to it.
So,
55 minus 10 is 55, not 45.
Right.
That includes the parapet.
I apologize.
It includes the parapet.
It includes the parapet, yes, it does. And it does show right here that it's 54 up to the top of the tower. Yes, and if you're still questioning, Mr. Kerback can explain it, but I know staff looked at this repeatedly because of the different elevations of the two rooms.
I think it'd be helpful to describe it because several people have questions.
We went through this, Andy Kerbach, Morgan Associates, 504 North Harbor City Boulevard, Melbourne. We went through this extensively with staff. So basically the garage is 45 feet, plus there's a 10-foot equipment, which we're allowed by code. And then you add that to the elevation of 10, whatever it was, 1058, which is on Orlando. That gets you to the 65-foot height. 65-foot elevation.
so you are measuring on the Orlando side? That was my question.
I'm sorry, Atlantic, north
So
Atlantic,
it's the Atlantic side,
which is northbound, north.
Right.
North A1A, yes.
okay. I know, it's very confusing.
Yeah, this one's pretty straightforward, actually, because the building height is 45 feet plus 10 feet for the equipment room.
Okay. Yes.
But is that how the definition is?
Yes.
That
That's
from
the
the
city code.
highest point of the
That's the city
street?
code, yeah.
Yeah, the city code from
Yeah.
the highest point
It's
of
the
the road.
average, it's the average.
The average of
Yeah,
the,
if you look at the actual site plan, we went it through exhaustively. There's elevations in the center. The way the code is written is that they wanted to see the elevation of the roadway at the property line at the south, in the middle, and at the north, or whatever, at the two edges, the three edges of the site, which is the boundaries and the center. And basically, that highest point is where we measure it from. But that's the code, that's your code requirement, which is kind of complex, but that's what it reads. And that's what you have here. That's why staff forwarded this to you guys.
When you say average, do you mean the median point of the garage, or, I don't know what you mean by average?
The garage is all one elevation.
Right,
Yeah.
it's all one elevation?
The top floor, yes. That has nothing to do with the height elevation wise. So when you see the 65-foot, 6558, that's based on elevation. And that's based on the roadway elevation per the city code. Any other questions?
So for a little history for you guys, question one was all about this allowing for, elevation for flooding. Where before it was like a hard, fast, 45 feet, like chink. And this allows, so this is actually the first project I think we've ever seen comes to the planning board that actually stays within the confines of what question one allowed and is not going, all the other projects to then have all just gone straight to variance because they all wanted to exceed it. So just to let you know, this is the first one that's actually within what the residents voted for and approved to change in our city code. So, anyways.
did you have any questions?
Yeah, is this your final design, what you're thinking about doing architecturally with the parking structure?
Yes, it is. The design was The elevation design was made by Frintrock. Frintrock is the same company that built the Cocoa Beach parking garage. And I told them that I would like something very similar for it to mesh very well with Cocoa Beach's skyline. And that's the product that we came up with.
Okay. Thanks.
I have a couple questions. Can you go back to the other view on the screen? Oh, you can stay up there, but they're for you. And some of these questions kind of get to the point of the email and conversations that I've had with people, just so you know. You might hear more from people who are in the audience. So you're not using that. There's no entrance or even walking entrance from the north side of the garage. Is that correct? To the alley. So I can't tell because part of the line was dotted, but let's just say towards the northwest side where the motorcycles are, and those compact spaces. Is there a walkway to get people out of the parking garage without walking in the roadway, you know, where the cars are going? Because I don't really see anything.
There's going to be three forms of pedestrian entrances. One is going to be through the garage, very close to where the vehicle entrance is. The other two are going to be through the stairwells.
So is there a stairwell?
Yes, so
right
on the-
next to it, so they can
the
walk through the
northeast?
stairwell and go
Yes.
out?
There's a stairwell here at the northeast, there's a stairwell here at the southwest, and then you go walk into the garage here.
So
That's
people
it.
on the motorcycles, do they have to walk?
You just walk this way.
So they are walking through the traffic? Incoming traffic
Into
theoretically?
the garage. Inside the garage.
There's no-
There is a walkway here. You can walk, you guys can walk into this striped area. Through the parking, you can go through all this striped area and don't have to walk in traffic.
At some point, you'll walk across the
You
front
have to
traffic,
walk
but
across the driveway.
there
just
is a
like-
path that gets them out of there without being in the middle of the road,
That's
or
correct.
the ramp or whatever.
That's right.
Please keep in mind that there's an elevation difference between the first floor elevation and really the surrounding. The only place where the elevation of the street meets the elevation of our first floor is in that driveway. So even if we would keep it open, there would be no way pedestrians will be able to walk to the alley without putting a few stairs there.
Okay, but there is no opening as of now for that reason? You don't have steps or a ramp or anything?
Correct,
that
there's no
gets people
steps, there's
out of
no
there?
ramps due to the change of elevation.
Okay, and in the traffic, I don't know what traffic study, how intense that was, other than identifying leaving the entrance and exit in the driveway that exists. Was there any information about what that does to the traffic flow on Minuteman coming in and out, like cars coming east on Minuteman trying to cross over and get into there with people? This is a high pedestrian area.
Right.
It's probably the highest pedestrian area that we have in South Cocoa Beach. And that is the intent to leave it, you know, pedestrian friendly. But to have all those people walking across the only driveway in and out with cars coming in and out that same way and crossing over the other side of A1A if the cars are coming heading east.
Right.
It seems like not a safe path for pedestrians.
There was two options, and I would first like to say for downtown Cocoa Beach to be pedestrian friendly, there has to be a place for people to park, which that's what I'm trying to accommodate. As far as entrances, there was only two options. One option was the alley or Minuteman. That's the two entrances I currently have. I had a choice either using one or keeping them both open. And to help the safety of the pedestrians, we decided to close one off. If you guys ever entered that parking lot, even in its current configuration, to exit out on the alley, I have a big truck. To exit out of the alley, I have to do a 2-point turn, which makes it even more unsafe. So safety obviously was the main concern on deciding the driveway, and we felt that utilizing the existing entrance on Minuteman was the safest out of the two. And we did decide to close one to help the safety.
So is there any plan to have like signage or something? I didn't see a sign plan that is clear for the cars and the people, that the entrance and exit's there, and maybe a way to stop the cars from coming in and occasionally if there's a line of people trying to cross or anything. I don't know what your signage plan is. I didn't see it.
We will work with city staff to identify the entrances as best as we can, and we will do our best to accommodate that.
Because I think, you know, I understand, you know, using the existing one, that seems like a small part of a traffic study to me, you know, but right now, there's pretty minimal cars in there. If you had, you know, 150 plus cars coming and going, it's like a totally different scenario, so.
So to help with your concern, I'll give you a little bit of the history of the property. About 10 years ago, the city of Cocoa Beach actually redeveloped that property into a commercial parking lot through a partnership agreement with 3 property owners, Yanyan being one of them. At that time, there was actually 2 driveway entrances from Minuteman. And when the city did their design and did the relevant traffic studies, they identified that that would be the best main entrance to all the parking lots, not to all the parking spaces, to include the 25 that I have on my property, and I think another 75 to the north of me. And historically, that was always the main entrance to those parking lots through that entrance right there. So I'm sure 10 years ago that was studied thoroughly, and that was what the city decided to do at the time. So I'm sure that pedestrian traffic was very important to the city when they designed that.
Yeah, I'm surprised it didn't address the much, much higher volume of traffic expected to a 5-story, you know,
The big difference is.
loaded garage versus a 25 cars coming and going, you know. So it's a totally different situation for the pedestrians there, so.
Not many more parking spaces of what the city had at the time of the partnership agreement with the 3 properties. Not a big difference on the amount of parking spaces.
Can you go back to the site plan? It's not clear to me, is there a dedicated deceleration and left turn lane going east on Minuteman to get into the garage?
That is the current configuration of Minuteman right now.
So there is one?
There is what?
There is a deceleration and dedicated,
The left turn? Yes.
because I think the point is well taken. There's a big difference between 25 surface spaces and 163 car and motorcycle spaces.
There was over 100 at the time when the city had the partnership with the 3 properties.
But not all coming out of off and on Minuteman.
That was the main.
The alleyway also.
That was the main entrance. If you would prefer, I could keep the alley open as well, if that's what the city would want. I highly doubt that you would want 2 entrances. The decision was actually based off of previous conversations that we had with Randy Stevenson. And at the city's request, they requested from us to close one of the driveways. We actually have 3. So the request of the city was to close off and just keep one open. And that was my concession with the city.
Currently, it's the Minuteman entrance and exit, it's the one on Atlantic, and it's the one in the alley, right? There's 3.
No, there's 2 on the alley, 1 on Minuteman.
Would you happen to know if the cars coming out on the Minuteman Causeway, if there's a sensor at that gate, the lift gate?
So
So that they could, you know, because it looks to me like if you're sitting there waiting to exit, that you wouldn't be able to tell if pedestrians were on the sidewalk. Do you know if there's going to be like a sensor attached to that lift gate?
for pedestrian,
For the driver to know if there's pedestrians crossing the sidewalk?
so it would sense pedestrians.
Yes.
Is that the question?
Yes.
I'm not familiar if that type of product exists. I never heard of that. That's something I could look into.
Yeah, I hadn't either, but it sure looks like there was a blind spot here.
Garage is open.
Yeah, it's open. I don't see where you see a blind spot. It is open.
Yeah, it's not closed off.
We do meet, there's codes that you have to meet for visibility, and we do meet those as well.
Okay,
The garage is open.
okay,
As you pull up, it's
Like the city garage, too.
okay,
just like the city's garage.
all right.
Or you can make it extra safe by putting a sensor so it flashes yellow when a vehicle's exiting, so pedestrians see the yellow light. I've seen that in like in many parking garages, and you can even add additional mirrors if you want, so the drivers can see.
Yes.
But like you said, it's open, but just ideas, you know.
We will definitely consider that. Safety is a concern of ours, and we want to make it as safe as possible.
One more question.
Yes.
And so, you said that was all, a lot of this was looked at 10 years or so ago. That was before Minuteman was all redone and the divider and kind of all the landscaping and everything that's been put in, correct? All that was before.
I'm not too sure of that timeline. It's public record. I'm
Because
sure
has there
it's-
ever really been usage of that area and that entrance and exit since this has been redone? Because it's kind of just been blocked off. People come from the other.
No, the Minuteman? No, I currently operate it as a commercial parking lot, using that as the entrance.
Do people normally go in and out of there all the
Yes.
time? Because I usually see them coming from the backside.
It depends. Once we fill up the front, that's when we open up the back.
So it'll get a lot more use, obviously.
I'm sorry?
This would get a lot more use of that, obviously, since there's no other option to go around the back. I'm just trying, I'm really just getting at the safety of the pedestrians and the people coming and going and walking through the garage itself and trying to get to the beach.
The existing drive is huge right now,
Correct.
substantial. There's a lot of people that use that driveway. You can go out there on a Saturday, it's used heavily.
Yeah, some, but I see them using the back sides too, so. Are there any other questions?
I'll make a motion if everyone's done.
So we do this, okay, we have some.
No public comment, I'm so sorry.
Public comments
Sorry.
as well,
Recommend
so,
nobody. Totally my bad.
we have a couple public
Close it out,
comments. Mike Miller? Mike?
I'm going to share with you the notes that I'll be working from so that you have them in front of you when you're deliberating on this project.
And Mike, could you give the applicant a copy as well?
Yeah. I'm going to keep this in the read file and
No
then
worries,
turn it
I'll
over.
grab one for the record. Thank you.
My name is Mike Miller. I live at 45 Country Club Road here in Cocoa Beach. Well-designed parking decks segregate vehicular and pedestrian movement to the greatest extent possible for safety. And I believe the Cocoa Beach parking deck on Orlando Avenue is a good example. You're all familiar with that building, and you can see that it achieves this objective successfully. Parking patrons exiting the building by either stair or elevator do not cross the path of vehicles entering or exiting the building. That didn't happen accidentally. We spent a lot of time reviewing that when we did the design of the garage. I believe the proposed vehicle and exit location on the proposed development here creates an unnecessary conflict between vehicles and pedestrians. Vehicles entering the existing park and exiting the parking deck are required to cross one of the busiest pedestrian sidewalks in the city, connecting downtown businesses to the beach. Additionally, parking patrons exiting the building are required to cross the vehicular path to reach the beach. I believe the proposed vehicle entry and exit location creates an unnecessary conflict with traffic flow as well. Most traffic on Minuteman Causeway is eastbound. In this location, it will require vehicles to make a left turn to enter and exit the parking deck. Drivers will be required to monitor both vehicular and pedestrian traffic before executing a safe turn into the building. And that is quite a trick. If you've ever tried to turn left onto a sidewalk that's busy, it's very difficult to find an opening where you can successfully make that turn. As a result, people will wait until they can make that turn. Traffic is likely to back up on Minuteman Causeway, blocking the traffic lane, which goes to the left turn lane to get onto A1A. Next issue, ADA handicap parking guidelines require an accessible route such that handicap parking patrons have safe passage to enter and exit the building. The accessible route should be located where individuals with disabilities do not have to cross a vehicular lane. This is federal legislation, an ADA requirement that's incorporated by reference into the Florida Building Code. The accessible route should be located where individuals, do not have to go into vehicular lane. In the proposed plan, no accessible route is provided, and handicapped individuals will be forced to cross a vehicular lane at the very busiest traffic location where vehicles are entering and exiting the parking deck. If you look up there where the handicap parking is in that lane to the, there's no accessible route. What that means is you get out of a car, you get into a wheelchair, you have to get to a walkway or an accessible route that will safely take you to enter or exit the building. It doesn't have that. I believe that's a code violation. I have some concern about the slopes of the ramps. Speed ramp. Now, a speed ramp is a ramp in the building that has no parking on it, which allows it to be steeper, and in this case would take you from the first to the second floor. It's at 16.11%. I feel that's excessive. Good engineering practice would dictate a ramp to be somewhere in the 8 to 10% slope with a maximum of about 12%. 16, I believe, is excessive. Also, the proposed plan has a parking ramp of 6.67 slope to the upper floors. Good engineering practice would dictate parking ramp with a maximum of 5% slope. I've designed many parking garages during my career as an architect, and I never designed one with greater than a 5% slope. Now, why? A parking ramp greater than 5% makes it difficult to exit a vehicle on the uphill side where you're trying to get out of the car, and difficult to control yourself on the downhill side. It's difficult to keep from falling and controlling the door on the downside. Believe me, door dings of adjacent cars will be prevalent when parking and ramps are greater than 5%. Many people are fearful of being mugged in the stairwell or elevator of a parking deck. These fears can be mitigated when stairs and elevator lobbies are open and clearly visible from the street. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, before Mr. Miller steps away, Mr. Miller, would you mind just briefly, just for the purpose of the record, would you mind stating very briefly your professional background?
I was a registered architect for 40 years. I've retired, moved to Florida about 11 years ago. I served on the city commission here for 8 years, as chairman of the planning board 2 years before that.
Thank you, sir.
And I guess after the public comments, maybe if you guys want to address, after we finish the public comments, I'll ask if you want to address any of these. We have one more. Melissa Byron? Yeah. Yeah, there's, I was going to let, we have two, and as of now, after she's, and if you have comments to address some others. Go ahead, Melissa. Go ahead.
Thank you. Melissa Byron, 3165 North Atlantic Avenue, Cocoa Beach. Thank you for allowing me to speak in front. I have some questions as a citizen of Cocoa Beach. Amendment Referendum 1, which we allowed for the 10 feet wash through and the 10 feet for appurtenances, was primarily, if I understand it as a citizen, I voted for being condominiums. I voted it for the height of something that's going to be in our city, that would be it, and they needed the wash through, so they couldn't put apartments there. So it had to be, it seems to me that a parking garage shouldn't get the 10-foot wash-through because they already have the wash-through. Their first floor will be parking, which is a wash-through. So that would mean that they would get the 45 feet plus 10 feet for the appurtenances, so 55 feet, not 65 feet. I think that that's excessive for the downtown, and I think it does not, it's not in keeping with what the citizens vote for in referendum 1. Because of this day and age, I would hope that if they build this garage, that they put some electric charging stations in them. You know, they can put them in at no cost, and they can charge for it. The parking garage of the city is practically always full in the 2 stations they have. So a station would be really good to have in the parking garage. You know, you're saying it's Mr. Tarver says this is great that a private company is stepping forward and building a parking garage. However, you are neglecting to understand that the city makes revenue in the parking garage, which will keep your taxes down. When you get $2.9 million from parking, then you don't have to tax us citizens more because you now have disposable income from parking. So it would be better for the city to build it, but that would be better for the citizens, all of them. Now, the thing about the city parking lot, I was the director of CRA when the city parking lot was built, and I was part of the project. City parking lot has only one exit, and that exit only has to be one way because it's exiting onto a one-way street. So you only have to look at traffic coming from north to the south. You don't have to look, you do, but you don't have to deal with that. So you're coming out and you make one turn, and you have to go around the block to head northbound. So you only have to be concerned about one direction. Additionally, yes, there is a walkway through that whole garage that you do not have to walk in traffic. And that is a fear, and that was a liability for the city, and besides it's good planning, that you don't want to have your pedestrians be in jeopardy, because remember, they're coming back from the beach. They're paying no attention to what is happening. Bathroom situation. I believe that, can I have a few more minutes? Sure, okay. The bathroom situation downtown, every business downtown will tell you that that is a huge issue. That's why we've added a bathroom in the city parking garage. That's why it was added. I think that if you're going to increase the parking from 25 places, or 30, what you have, to 163, that you should provide a restroom. The downtown businesses would want you to, because they're going to come off the beach, they're going to come down, and then they start looking for a restroom. That's why I believe you should ask and suggest that he put a restroom in to accommodate the extra people that are going to be coming in that very position. And lastly, I am not in favor of it being downtown at the gateway of the entrance to city of Cocoa, where people come to the beach. It doesn't fit. There's nothing else that tall right at that corner. Yes, you have Boardwalk and Park Place. And then you have the new Surf on Cocoa Beach, which is further down. So I think that it needs a lesser view of it if you're going to be promoting something in Cocoa Beach. Thank you.
Did you want to address any of the comments that you just... That's the end of the public comments that I had, yes.
Do you close it for public comment? Then we can discuss it. How does it work?
No, we don't
Just-
close it.
Andy Karbach, Morgan Associates. There's a couple things that Mr. Miller brought up. As far as the entrance off of Minuteman, basically right now it's the existing driveway. The main operations there is that everybody comes in from northbound A1A. They ride in, they'll go into the garage just like they would normally do, just like they do into the parking lot. And it's right out, just the same way that they would do it right now. Same situation, the driveway doesn't change. So as far as creating a different traffic pattern, that's the existing traffic pattern, right in, right out. As far as ADA access, the parking garage was designed by Finfrock. Finfrock designed the city of Cocoa Beach's garage. So they're very familiar with the codes. They're already familiar with the permitting process through you guys. So Mr. Gall took that under advisement. He talked to FinFrock. They're very familiar with what the city is looking for. And basically, all the handicap spots are on the first floor. They all have ADA accessible ramps, and they all are accessible without going behind a vehicle, per code, to get out of the garage. So the accessibility is per code. That's basically what I had for Mr. Miller.
Can you show how that path is
Yeah,
when they
where is
come
the
out and how they
accessible-
get out of the street, out to the street from those parking spots?
So basically, everybody, these handicaps that are here, they basically come across, and this has access without being drive out.
So they're basically using the same access as everybody else. That's, I guess, what everybody else is using.
They cross the driveway, which is allowed by code. And then they have a safe area where they can walk through without being in a traffic dot.
So the cars entering and turning right would be crossing, they'd be crossing over right where they
They
are.
would have to cross, but that's a standard operation.
Just making sure we
That's
understood
allowed
the
by
path.
code.
Okay.
It's allowed by code.
So on the first floor, on the elevation, it looks like except for the north side, is it all open like that? So I mean,
It's all open.
so they have access, it's not just the
Yeah.
3 points of entry, those are the stairwells.
Yeah, these,
Right.
so the stairwells can drop out, they drop
Right.
out to the sidewalk, then all this, anything that's striped, this is just at grade, so they can walk out this.
Right, okay.
So all pedestrians that come down, most everybody else that's in the garage is gonna
Right.
come down either the elevator or the stairwell.
Yeah.
And most people use the elevator.
So the west elevation would be on South Atlantic, correct?
West is this way.
Okay, so the east, this is looking at it from the east, okay, to the east. So that's all open, they can walk right out onto the sidewalk from there? Yes, right along there? Yeah,
There's landscaping along there, but
Okay.
they could, but the idea would be is that we're gonna landscape that.
okay, because this doesn't show it from elevation, so, okay.
There would be a step down, is what
There
you're
would be a
saying.
step too. There's a step.
There's a, ledge
But
or
the
something.
idea is that all the ADA spots, they all come to the minute.
Do you have any idea why they didn't put any of those 88 spots along Minuteman? Why are they in the
These are
center?
all on Minuteman.
Right, but the ones are located in the center of the garage.
These are on the first floor, and these are accessible to the walkway aisle to Minuteman.
Well, I was wondering why they didn't place any of them to the right.
There's one.
That's one.
Oh, these?
Those.
Yes.
They would have to, there's a grade differential here. So as you go over this way, the grade gets higher.
Okay.
So they wouldn't be able to get out of the garage this way. This is the closest way for them to get out of the garage. You have to remember the grade is differential. North Atlantic, North A1A is up high.
Okay.
And then the grade, where we match grade is basically at this driveway, at the existing driveway.
Okay. And could you speak to Mr. Miller's comments about the slope?
The slope,
Yeah.
I understand what he's talking about with the slope, with the ramp, but these meet the code for parking garages. Any other questions on Mr. Miller's comments?
No, I would like to ask Mr. Gall, if you wouldn't mind, how much money will you be spending here in our community to build this?
Between $4.5 to $6 million.
Okay, so soon you'll be paying property taxes on this, or so the city will be getting revenue?
Absolutely,
From this? Okay.
absolutely, yes.
And I assume that this is all your liability, so if it was to be destroyed in a hurricane, I guess the city taxpayers would not be coming to bail you out to fix your parking garage?
Correct.
And I assume city employees are not going to be maintaining it or anything? This is all on you, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, that's good to know, because that's really important, because any city structure, one, doesn't pay taxes. It might have parking revenue. But also, I've lived here 12 years, and my millage rate goes up every year, so unless parking garages are the panacea to lower taxes in Cocoa Beach, I think it's great you're building this garage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I did want to touch on Melissa Byron's comments. First of all, we are not proposing a 65-foot high structure. That's a misrepresentation. From first floor elevation to the top of the finished floor is 45. And then in the city code, it also allows for another 10 feet, for unoccupied elements. Perfect example of what an unoccupied element is. When you have an elevator, you have to have equipment to pull that elevator up. So if the city would not allow a 10-foot allowance on top of the finished floor, building heights would actually be 35 and not 45. So to be able to achieve the 45, you have to allow that additional room for mechanical equipment, for parapet walls to cover the mechanical equipment, to do elevator shafts and stairwells properly. So it's not for the wash-through, as stated. It is for the unoccupied elements to be able to achieve the 45-foot height. In the building does not exceed 45, nor does it exceed 55, including the parapet from the crown of the road, sorry.
If I might ask, is that all you intend for that additional space on the top? Is the elevator and structure to enclose it in and that kind of thing?
Correct, yes.
Room?
Elevator shafts, stairwells, and parapet walls. That's what the code allows.
Did you have any comment on EV charging stations and
So
bathrooms at all? No.
Okay, so bathrooms, thank you for reminding me. I actually wanted to touch on that. My background is the retail sector. I used to own the Beach Wave stores. I'm sure most of the people know me for the Beach Wave stores. At my time in the retail business, I had to provide bathrooms for my customers. So if bathrooms is such a concern, I highly recommend that the city enforces the surrounding businesses to provide bathrooms. Because I would say, besides Coconuts, most businesses do not provide bathrooms for their patrons, nor for any walk-up traffic. Furthermore, the city parking garage, I would say a big percentage of the time, the city bathroom is closed. I even had Main Street approach me about the bathroom situation, that they have a festival going on and they have 0 bathrooms to provide the guests of the festival. Bathroom, of course, is a concern, but I don't think it is my job to solve the problems of the bathrooms. I think the city needs to enforce the bathroom regulations on each business, and the city needs to do its job to properly maintain and clean the city parking lot's bathroom, and not shift the burden on private citizen.
And charging
Oh,
stations?
EV charging stations. One of my Beachway developments in Titusville, I included an EV charging station, and I did look at, it was actually the same company that the city used, which is ChargePoint, and you could actually look on ChargePoint's website how many times the charging station is utilized and used, and if you look at that data, you would see that the EV charging station in the parking garage is not utilized, primarily because it's considered a slow charger. A slow charger costs anywhere between $15,000 to $20,000. The only way, in my opinion, that a charger actually makes financial sense as a business would be a fast charger, which costs anywhere between $50,000 to $100,000. At this point in time, I'm not considering any EV charging stations for that reason. And my personal experience, out of a whole year of having EV charging station in downtown Titusville, in a very, very prominent location, it generated maybe $20 worth of revenue.
How would your parking rates stack up with the city?
I don't think I need to disclose my financial stance on how and when I'm intending to charge what. I don't think that that's an appropriate question, to be honest with you.
Well, the way I see it is, the city is trying to cover certain expenses by having another parking garage. So you do represent competition. So I want to know if this is a cooperative business relationship or not.
We are in a capitalist country. Competition is a good thing. That's what makes America great. And I don't think the threat of me being competition to the city should be any weight for approving or denying me.
Marge, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just concerned that we're being a little bit too cavalier, and I don't feel comfortable recommending something with the logistics of something as significant of the impact on the business and, God forbid, on special events that have been going on in the city for a long, long time would have if we closed the street. I think everybody's talking about, well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Well, that bridge is going to come very, very soon, and this is not a light issue. It's a very significant issue, and I'm concerned that not enough thought has been put into it by either the city or the applicant. I'm also concerned that the traffic study that was done by the applicant, which was very nice, was not analyzed, I don't believe, by the city and by the fire department. And the response I got tonight was, well, once you make your recommendation, that'll be the next step. Well, I don't think it should be the next step, because in my mind, that's critical of knowing whether or not the fire department thinks this is all safe for me to make a recommendation or not. I brought up the bathroom early on, and I want to make it very clear. I'm not trying to make you responsible for the overall bathroom benefits of the downtown. What I'm simply saying is it would be a tremendous asset to a 162 vehicle parking structure that would, at capacity, have 300 people. It would be very nice to be able to have bathroom facilities in there. I'm not going to opine by the cities, whether it's closed or whether it's open. It's always been open when I've been there. But I'm simply saying I think it's an important element of a structure of this size, especially a structure of this size that's coming in and out of the beach. I don't expect you to put showers in. I think that's onerous, and it's not a recommendation I would make to anybody who was proposing a parking structure. But I do think it's important to have 2 bathroom stall facilities in the parking structure. Again, you don't have to do it. It's not part of the code. I brought it up because I think it's important, and I think it would benefit everybody, including the owner of the parking structure.
I will highly consider the bathrooms.
Okay. And I just wanted to congratulate Mr. Miller on doing a lot of work. He made a very concise and thoughtful presentation, and Ms. Byron also. And that's all I have to say. But again, I'm concerned. These things need to be thought about before I feel comfortable making a recommendation.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
I wanted to make one more comment about the fire department. The fire department did have a chance to review the site plan and did give approval of this site plan as it is right now.
Do we have anything, because it's not part of the package that we got?
No, it's in our city webpage review cycle. The fire department did review and approve as it is right now.
Well, thank you, and I would suggest that perhaps in the future, something like that be included in the package so we can see, and it would allay fears that I have, because I'm sitting here saying, how could I possibly recommend something if the critical departments haven't submitted an analysis and whether they think it's good or not?
Yes, that's a part of our review process. Prior to bringing this site plan forward, we review those things, fires, all of the different sections within the city, review all of these site plans prior to us bringing them forward. And it was not announced to me that I should bring that information at this particular site plan, but I will make sure I bring it moving forward.
Thank you.
Are you saying,
Hold on.
excuse me.
Hold on.
just had a
Wait.
question.
I think Orson had the next.
I was going to make a motion.
Well,
We're still
I
talking.
have another question. Are you saying that the fire department could render an opinion on the suitability of the traffic flow?
No, the
I mean,
fire
going from
department
the
only
parking
looks
garage,
at.
or am I mishearing that?
No, the fire department, I was speaking to, specifically to the fire department and whether they had reviewed this project or not.
Okay,
So it did not have anything to do with the traffic. They reviewed based on access
Okay.
for their fire trucks and fire vehicles. And they did review for that. Again, additional review will go through during the building permitting phase to make sure of any additional requirements in terms of once the structure is being actually permitted. And that's what I was speaking to earlier.
I just have one last kind of summary that I just think that, although I think at the time, probably when this was conceived, it was maybe in between the city parking garage being done or somewhere, maybe right after that. And I feel that, there's about 450 plus parking spaces available between First Street North and about 4th Street South, which is about five blocks, kind of right here. And that particular area is intended to be, very pedestrian friendly. That's what the code says. The town center is pedestrian oriented for dining, shopping, and all that. I'm really concerned for the safety and liability side of all the pedestrians that we now have from changes that have occurred over the last 5 to 10 years, whatever. There are a lot more people, a lot more cars, and I really feel that this is going to be a very unsafe area for pedestrians unless we can make some changes to keep them all safe coming, going, cars crossing. It's already pretty bad even with the crosswalk that's there, and so it's just my view. But we'll open it up. Orson, did you have something you
I
want
was
to
going
say?
to make a motion.
Okay, is there any other comments for that?
Yeah, I have the same concerns about the traffic and especially like special events. I think it's going to hinder your business, and then to try and figure out a way to make sure everyone exits that wants to get out every time the street gets closed. Would you consider adding maybe just an exit that you can open up for special events in the back, maybe like the motorcycle parking is in the alley, so you wouldn't be hindered as a business trying to make sure you shuffle everybody out of there and people's cars don't get trapped for 4 or 5 hours when the streets do get closed?
So, once again, when we did discuss the entrance, the two options was the alley and Minuteman. The alley is not feasible due to it being really, really tight. And the safer out of the two was Minuteman. The fact of the matter is, I understand and I appreciate everybody's concern, and that was our number one concern and our number one topic was pedestrian safety, but we only had 2 to work with. Well, we had 3. And as a concession, I did decide to close off the alley, so there's not too many points of entrance and exits. Actually, the city felt that it would be better if we didn't have another entrance or exit. That's how we came up with this design right here. And I mean, the commercial parking lot is an allowed use. The commercial garage is an allowed use. I have 2 entrances to work with. We picked this one based off of the safety. And more than that, there's not much that we could do. Obviously, a traffic study will be required at time of permitting, which we agreed to provide. But we felt that it was premature to provide a $15,000, $20,000 traffic study if I would get denied either with city council or with city staff.
Do we have a motion?
All right, for the proposed large-scale development at 2 Atlantic Avenue North, I move to forward the site plan to the city commission with the recommendation of approval with the following conditions. A, the applicant meet with city staff to define road closures, the impact, so that can be communicated to the city commission, so they're fully aware of your understanding of what will be happening. B, the city engineer, look at the traffic flow on Minuteman to ensure it'll work, I guess, and also with your traffic study. And I think C, emphasize if you can meet with city staff on pedestrian safety, whether it's lights, sensors, mirrors, however that can be defined, so that the city commission is fully aware of how it'll work. I know it's kind of a little bit free-handed, but I hope that works. So that's my motion.
Do we have a second?
No, dies without a second.
No? We have an alternative motion?
I don't have a motion, but I'd like to make a suggestion that the applicant.
You can amend my motion, I think, right? Mr.
Well,
Ellis?
or,
No.
I think the motion has died. She could
Oh, it already
propose a
died.
motion that sounds a lot like yours.
Gotcha, okay.
I'm not making a motion. I'm making a suggestion. I'd like to suggest that we table this for 1 month to give the applicant an opportunity to do exactly what needs to be done. Because as I sit here, I know the whole issue of whether it gets closed for the special events is going to wind up in court. We all know that. And that's probably the last thing anybody wants to do. So let's, for 1 month, can we just get it straightened out? That's my suggestion. I think it would alleviate a lot of concern on the part of this planning board, and I think a part of the citizenry as well. Let's not put the proverbial cart before the horse. Let's get all the ducks in a row, give it a month, come back, and then we can take the appropriate action.
Then make a motion to table it with those conditions.
That's my suggestion. I'd like to hear what everybody else thinks.
So I think we're ready for a motion of some sort. So a motion can be to table it for some time.
Okay, then I will make that a motion. I move that we table this for 1 month to give the applicant an opportunity to take care of the issues that have been of concern to this planning board, so that we could all very comfortably make a proper recommendation to the city commission.
So define the conditions, or define the concerns, so they're clear.
Clearly define and make a decision on the logistics of what would happen to the parking structure in the event, or when the event, I'm not going to say when special events occur, and we have no alternative but to close down the street and therefore impact the business.
Am I able to,
Well,
No, it's a motion, so.
yeah,
And
there's,
the second caveat is that this board get a written confirmation from all departments in the city that they are comfortable with the traffic study, they're comfortable with the ADA flow, and they're comfortable with, that's it, the traffic, the traffic in and out, and the sight lines, and the ADA traffic flow, and the impact on pedestrians. Those things, those points. You're making me think
Do
too
we have
much.
that's 4 things. The approach for closing down or alternative during events, confirming with the city, the appropriate city staff about the traffic study and ADA that's been maybe halfway done, and aligning with the comments that came out today, the sight lines and the impact on pedestrians. So that's the motion. Do I have a second? That was to table it with all those caveats.
Okay.
Okay, do I have
I'm just gonna make a motion to
another
approve.
alternative motion?
For purposes of this large-scale development at 2 Atlantic Avenue North, move to forward the site plan to the city commission with recommended approval. That's it. These guys have been here long enough. Let's either vote yes or no. I mean, let's give them that honor.
Do we have a second? So what are we doing? We're at a
All right.
standstill.
so, in the absence of something along the lines of tabling. And by the way, if you were going to go down the route of tabling, generally under Robert's Rules of Order, tabling is not subject to debate and all that. Notwithstanding that, I was going to recommend that you allow the applicant to speak to those issues prior to you taking action on it. Y'all haven't made a motion or had a motion on the floor to table. So you're here now. You've had two different motions to approve, one with conditions, one without. The options that are available for you, if it's not to approve without conditions and it's not to table, it would be to approve with other conditions or to deny. However, if there would be a motion to recommend denial, I advise you in the strongest terms, you must set forth on the record precisely what your legal basis is and factual basis is for a recommendation of denial. And the additional piece of advice I would give you based on the discussion that I've heard is when there had been discussion from the public and so on about competition, all right? Competition in the context of the parking garage being competitions for the city parking garage would not be a legal basis to recommend denial. So I want to put that right out there on the record for you all. So if there would be a motion for recommendation of denial, you must state on the record precise legal and factual basis for the recommendation of denial.
To restate my motion. Okay,
gonna
I'm going to try to
restate
restate the motion.
another motion.
Can I see your pieces of your notes? Because my notes are all over the place here.
That's what I have.
The four things, okay.
I'll read it.
I would like to make a motion that we table this matter for 1 month to give the applicant the opportunity to address the following items with city staff and his own consultants. We would need a concrete decision on what would happen when the city has special events that require Minuteman from Atlantic to Orlando be shut down for any length of time. Number 2, written confirmation from the city staff regarding the traffic study, the pedestrian impacts for the pedestrians on Minuteman, and ADA flow. And also whether or not it's advisable, I have to amend it, I have to throw something else in, whether or not it's advisable to request that the applicant provide bathroom facilities. That's my motion.
So do we have a second?
I second the tabling.
Second the table, second that motion that she just made.
Yes.
Okay. All in favor?
Yep. My suggestion would be you allow the applicant to.
Okay, did you have something
to comment
to say?
concerning that motion prior to you taking any action?
Okay.
Yes, I will like to touch on the comments that you just made. First of all, I would like everybody to understand that I'm already 6 months in this progress. I submitted my site plan in December of last year. I think 6 months is enough time to keep me waiting to get my approval. There is not an aspect of the site plan that wasn't discussed very thoroughly, I might add. I do recommend that you guys do go on the Cocoa Beach permit portal. You can see over there the comments and the responses. And I could assure you that we did the best job we can as far as pedestrian safety and as far as meeting all applicable codes. So to table it for another month I don't understand why I need to make that concession, being that I was already held up for quite some time with the city approval process, and I would like to note that that was during Randy Stevenson's time, as they weren't too sure on how to proceed with this, and it took me weeks on end to get any sort of response from the city. So 6 months, I think, is more than enough time to wait. As far as the closure of the parking garage during city events, to me, it sounds like I would need to agree to close a parking lot down, lose a whole day, 2 days, a week worth of business in order to get my approval. If the city would believe that that's fair, I think that if I concede to that, the city also agreed to close their city parking lot down if I agreed to do so. So I don't think that that's a fair and just recommendation to make sure that you guys get approval in writing from me that I will agree to close my parking lot down in order to get approval. I don't think that that's right. I don't think that, this is my humble opinion, I don't even think that's legal to put as a condition. But you have your city attorney over here that you could further ask him on that topic.
Yes, I have a question. Does the city have right to close streets for special events?
Yes, it does. So with regard to this matter of asking for additional information concerning what the plan and intention would be with regard to that facility, when the practice that has been going on for many years, as the applicant knows, that street is closed at least once a month. I don't think it is out of bounds to ask for a clear answer as to what the applicant anticipates they will see as the result and their position concerning that. Requiring them to do any particular thing, one way or the other, is when it gets a little bit more complicated. Yeah. Asking the question as to what they perceive is what they see as the plan. When that does happen in the future, I think that is a question that is in bounds to ask. Forcing a particular result, we need to get more into the weeds on it. So
He can say, the applicant can say, no, I'm not going to shut down the garage, it's not going to happen, but at least we'll all know where we stand. Right now, we don't know where we stand, and that's my concern. I want to know where we stand. That's it.
So
I said that I would consider it, and I gave you examples of the times that I did close and donate my parking lot to the art festival, to the boat shows, and every Main Street. You didn't hear a peep out of me. But to set it as a condition that I have to agree to close my parking lot anytime the city wishes is not going to happen.
But sir, it's only fair to you.
Let's wait. Can I throw out?
As you know, the city commission has to approve this.
Yeah,
We're
it goes
just,
to the
so
city
if you-
commission.
That's
if
what
we
I was
just
just
ask them
gonna,
to
hold on, that's what I was
clarify.
just gonna say.
We just clarify to them.
Can I make a different motion for approval with the fact that I will go, or the planning board will be representing and voice these to the commission, these concerns to the commission, who are ultimately the approval?
I'll second the motion to approve based
Wait a
on those
minute, we have a
conditions.
motion?
yeah, everyone, we've got a motion on the floor right now. In the course of discussion, you've said what your motion would be if this motion isn't successful. So everybody can take that into consideration on it. So if you'd like to proceed with your motion, I'd suggest if there's no further discussion on it, you can have a vote on the motion that's on the floor to table with the direction that you have. And if that motion fails, then you could make that motion.
I thought we already did. So did we have a
We have
second
not
for
had-
that?
Yeah, you have not had a vote yet on the motion to table.
that- you did
You've had a
second it,
motion,
right?
you've had a second.
Second that? Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed?
Nay.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay. So me too. So we have 3-2.
So it
Yes, so the
failed.
motion's failed.
Motion failed. So go ahead, do
That's
yours.
one yours.
Go ahead, do yours.
So my motion is for the proposed large-scale development of 2 Atlantic Avenue to move forward the site plan for the city commission with the recommendation of approval, and that the concerns voiced here in the discussions that we've had will be summarized and brought forward to the commission when it's on the agenda for the commission for approval.
I second.
All those-
Just time out 1 second, I'm really sorry. I don't have your rules of procedure in front of me immediately here. Under our rules of procedure, do we have a problem with the chair making a motion? I can't
That's
recall.
what I was wondering, because I'm chairing today, if I could even make the motion.
Sorry for that, I just want to make sure we're getting everything.
No, it's good, keep
Yeah.
us straight.
Because you just rescinded, and I'll just do it.
And that's what I was going to recommend if
Yeah. You
if
wanna
not
rescind your
otherwise.
motion?
I'll rescind my motion.
Okay, for the purpose of large-scale
Not in front of
development.
you, no. If not, then yeah, it'd be safer to,
Go ahead.
For the purpose of the large-scale development of 2 Atlantic Avenue North, I move to forward the site plan to the city commission with recommendation of approval. I'm going to repeat my previous ones. For city staff to meet with the applicant to discuss the road closure so that the city commission understands what his opinion is. Look into, pedestrian safety, to enhance that. I'm just tired. And also, the city engineer is going to look at the traffic study. So those are the 3 conditions. So I make that motion to approve. Sorry. It's been a long day.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
No?
No, I said aye.
Oh, you said aye. Okay, so good.
motion passes.
Motion passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thanks.
All right, next. Second item, new business, is the Land Development Code amendment. Ready?
Good evening, Planning Board members. My name is Tabitha Armstrong, and I'm the Associate Planner. I'm bringing forward for your review Agenda Item C2, a request to amend the Land Development Code, Chapter 4, Article 4, Section 443, to permit modification of previously approved special exceptions, even when the special exception is no longer a permitted use. This topic began as a discussion item at a City Commission meeting in January, and after some discussion, staff were requested to bring the proposed language that was presented at the commission forward to the planning board for review. And this language is what I have for you tonight. So just a quick review of the current process and how these proposed changes would affect that. A special exception is the use of a property which is not permitted by right. These requests go to the Board of Adjustment for review and approval. There are 3 criteria that the board reviews when making their determination. The first being that the use is listed as an allowable special exception use within the applicable zoning district. Second, that the use is found compatible with the permitted uses in that specific zoning district. And third, that the requested use will not be detrimental to the surrounding properties, businesses, traffic flow area, and that such special exception is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Currently, if an applicant would like to request to adjust or modify their previously granted special exception, they will simply submit for a new special exception. Given the first criteria just mentioned, those owners with an existing special exception where the use is no longer permitted have no options to submit a new request or to amend or modify. This proposed language as it's written would create the ability for owners within the Town Center Redevelopment District only to submit for a modification of their existing special exception, even when their item is no longer a permitted use. This language does not create a new process. It will remain the same application and checklist as the current special exception applications, and any proposed modifications would still go before the Board of Adjustment for review. The proposed language is highlighted in your review for your review in Exhibit A. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those best I can at this time.
What, is there something specific that drove this request?
Yes, I do believe that there is a current owner who's kind of in this situation themselves that requested this item be brought forth, and that was brought forth for the commission. So there is one property that started this. It's not the only property that would be affected by this, but it's currently a warehouse storage facility, and that is no longer a permitted use within the Town Center redevelopment district. And so if they were to request a modification or to amend their special exception in any way, they don't have that ability because of the current guidelines.
Were there other questions? I have a question.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at 443, paragraph G. It says future uses of the property shall be in compliance with zoning regulations and special exemption is no longer valid. I guess to me that means they're trying to phase it out so people couldn't get grandfathered in is how I read that. So at some point, the intent is to transition to, not having the exception.
Right.
Does this kind of override that? It seems like it's in conflict with it.
G does discuss that the special exception remains in effect unless the use is changed, discontinued, or abandoned, and that's part of that future uses of the property in that effect when that steps in.
So to me, G sounds like it shouldn't be valid, and the new J sounds like it can be, and there's no expectation that they would have to, that they could just keep renewing the exception. Does that make sense? Am I reading that wrong? Or?
Well, their special exception remains throughout the time. There's not an expiration of when once they have the use that they're able to use it.
Right.
The G talks about that when the use is changed. So if they were allowed a warehouse storage facility and then they changed it to a barber shop, they wouldn't be able to go back to that warehouse storage facility because of the future uses of the property. That makes
Isn't the intent to basically be in compliance and not have the exceptions at some point? I mean, I thought that was the whole point of.
I think it is.
Yeah,
I mean, over time, the point is you come into compliance.
Well, and you raise a really good point that actually is going to raise a slight suggested tweak to the proposed language here to address this here. So what G is getting at, all right, special exceptions, if say on a given piece of property, some use is listed as a special exception use, all right? And it continues to be a special exception use there. What G is getting at is you get approval for a special exception on that given property there, and you can continue to have that special exception use there on that property until it's discontinued, all right? Discontinued for 6 consecutive months or 18 months during a 3-year period, all right? And then poof, you lose it, and now you're back to just the permitted uses, and if you wanted to get a special exception again, you have to troop back in and ask for it again. If in the interim the special exception got removed from that list of uses there, then you wouldn't be able to come back and get back in. I think the intention of J is to address a situation where there is an unexpired special exception.
Correct.
All right, and that's it's going to figure out the right way to work that into J here.
Okay.
You got an unexpired special exception, right? And then in your list of uses, you got your list of permitted, conditional, or special exception and prohibited uses. And special exception, that use came out. Well, that property's grandfathered. It can continue doing what it's doing because it has a valid special exception. What J would be saying is on that special exception, if you were going to make a modification to one of the conditions, right, is the primary thing we're looking at? It's
Yes, so if
modification
they
of
were
conditions.
to ask, say they were recently we just did a special exception where an outdoor recreational facility was conditional between hours of operation of 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Say they wanted to come back and modify that to 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. This is the kind of conditional changes that would be applicable in J.
Yeah, so it would allow someone that's otherwise grandfathered to be able to stay there and keep doing that use until they discontinue it, all right? To be able to come back and ask for modifications to it without losing it.
Right.
Okay? I would imagine our intention in J is not to revive
Correct.
special exceptions. So if you had a use, granted a special exception, you discontinued it, right? They'd have to come back in to get approval for special exception again. If in that time it was taken out of the special exception use and permitted use table, they wouldn't be able to troop in and ask for it again because it's not in the list, right? So I think J is just trying to get at being able to tweak the conditions of an existing special exception use, not to
Should it
revive any or
add
anything like
the
that.
terms condition or something, the terminology to
Yeah,
include
that's-
the condition of it and not the whole exception?
That's what I was gonna make some suggestions on some language here, and if anybody else has any discussion, I'll
Board
do some.
adjustment would still have to vote or not? Or is it administrative change?
What's that?
Change to the condition, would that be administrative, or would that be Board of Adjustment have to
Board
vote
of
on that?
Adjustment.
The idea would be it would go back to the Board of Adjustment and say, hey, this is the special exception and the list of conditions you all approved back whenever.
Okay.
And they're asking to change condition 3 in this way.
Okay, and that'd be properly noticed and so the
Yes,
public.
Go through all the stuff you have for Board of
prohibited use for
Adjustment.
all the items.
Okay.
So would this run with the original owner, or if the owner sold the property, would it also convey?
It would convey, because our special exceptions generally convey,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So, yeah, our special exceptions generally are not particular to an owner. It's just that the use continues and is not discontinued under either of the standards for discontinuing. So you can end up, you have a barber shop.
Yeah.
The owner of that barber shop can sell to somebody else and continue to operate the barber shop. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion?
Public comment, bro?
Okay. Oh, there was a public comment, sorry. Are there any public comments?
I'm one of the owners that they're discussing here, but I.
Sir,
Sorry,
yeah.
go on.
I'm one of the owners here that they're talking about, and
Your name and
I,
your name and address.
Name and address.
Sorry.
my name is Greg DiPolito. I own Woodland Business Center with my wife Penny. I'm one of the owners that you all are discussing here, and I agree with the language. I have no problem. I think that would help us out if we could just move forward with that, and we would go back to the Board of Adjustments and talk to them about what we need in this special exception. If you all have any questions, feel free to ask.
You're okay with the language that we said maybe includes a change or the language as is?
I'm not sure who's talking right now.
That's me. Sorry.
Okay.
You're okay with the language as is without a change, or if we modify it to include
The
some-
modification seems
You're
to
okay
me
with
to
it? Okay.
be the right way to go. That's
Just
exactly the
clarify.
way he,
Right.
excuse me, what's your name?
Wade.
Wade.
Wade votes. I'm the city.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with everything
Okay, thanks.
he's proposing.
Is there any other?
questions?
Go ahead. We have another public comment.
Charles Broughton, 35 Westview Lane. I'm kind of unclear. It sounded like this was only in one district, one subdistrict, one town center or something, and I don't understand why doesn't it apply with the whole city? When we do the code, you don't have to answer, but when we do the code, we try to make it consistent, across the board. And when you start picking out this, that, and the other thing, sometimes it gets a little bit lost. And so whatever it is, I'd like to see the change, apply to everywhere rather than just one area. When we did convert over to these new districts and whatever, it was a pretty thorough process to go through all the permitted uses, all these special exceptions. And at the time, I seem to recall Randy said, hey, we didn't change anything. We're just overlaying it and changing the names. But we didn't change anything. So I'm kind of curious what special use got dropped and how we missed that or what we missed. But regardless, it seems like it should apply across the board rather than, unless I'm missing something that you have to pick out this special thing. So as long as you're looking at everything and try to get it all taken care of just this one time rather than have to keep coming back and forth, that's 2 cents.
Hi, Melissa Byron, 3165 North Atlantic Avenue. I just want to understand it because I'm a little bit confused here. When the LDC was written, they said special exceptions. Here, you can have these things. Let's do it at the barber shop. You can have a barber shop, a beauty shop, and a restaurant, okay, in this area. In special exceptions, also would be considered to have, I don't know, I'll do your storage or parking or something like that. So when the planning board made this, they wanted to remove some things so they wouldn't be considered in a special exception. Okay, so if it's not in a special exception, then you don't get it. So I guess what I'm wondering is, are we putting things back? Because that's saying that 10 years ago, I put in a barber shop, and then I sold my property to Joe, and Joe put in, a restaurant. The barber shop was the special exception, so he changed the usage. Now he's going to come back and say, I want to go back to a barber shop. Well, there was a reason why is that wrong? Is that how it is? They wouldn't, okay, so but there was a special exception allowed to have the barber shop, but then they got rid of it, and they didn't have it for a year, and they had something else, but they came back and wanted to do the barber shop again.
They couldn't do that, that's the part
Okay.
we're talking about with G, where there's that period of 6 months, 6 consecutive months, that's they lose that special exception. There's no
Okay.
bringing that back.
No bringing it back.
Right, when it's no longer prohibited, when it's no longer permitted use, they would not be able to bring it back for a new special exception.
I guess I didn't understand, because it sounds like to me you were going to let him bring it back.
No, this is just modifying
Well, you-
existing special exceptions, correct? It's modifying the condition.
Conditions.
Conditions.
Like operating time, stuff like that, you monitor the pool, right?
So the Board of
Yeah.
Adjustment votes, they can add conditions to this special exception, right?
Yes,
So they could,
yes, they would vote.
so they could add 3 or 4 conditions, and potentially a year later, someone comes back and says, I need to change condition 1
Correct,
from
yeah.
3 p.m. to 6 p.m. to 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. or
Yes.
something like that.
Given that it was a continued use and it was never changed over time, that the structure was not changed, discontinued, or abandoned, those items in G would all still apply to where they would not be able to step away from the business and relinquish that from the change of use from the barber shop to anything else, and then get the barber shop back. That
Okay.
does not change.
Now I understand. Thank you.
So I think that helps for conditions and an exception that's not expired.
Yeah.
Which is, but I don't know about the town center, specifically why just that.
This
Trained
was
in.
language that was kind of given to us with the town center already outlined. I haven't really reviewed into the specifics of why that was presented in that way. It's just kind of how it ran. And that can be amended, that can be changed if you guys were to see that you wanted to apply it. Because we were reviewing it from a town center only, I'm not sure how many other properties that would affect from the entire city. I was only looking at special exceptions within the town center that this potentially would be applicable to.
So that means that if someone else petitioned somewhere else to do the same, some other area, they could.
They could.
No, if they were like, say they were in the Cottage Row or the RS1 district, that would not be applicable to this. This would only apply for modifications to previously existing special exceptions within the town center district only.
But once this set precedent, then someone else could come forward and do
We
the
would
same.
have to go back through this whole process again and amend that to extend to other districts.
And you all can, in your
Just make it generic.
recommendation, make it general to all districts, not make it specific to town center. So let me give a try with my language hack here real quick. This is a first shot, and I'll type it up in a minute here. The owner of a property subject to an approved special exception currently in effect may apply to the Board of Adjustment for a modification to such special exception, may apply to the Board of Adjustment for a modification to the conditions of such special exception. notwithstanding the fact that such use is no longer a currently allowed special exception use.
I think it's by living in town center, it's actually kind of a cautious approach because we can see what happens. We can always, it can always be opened up. They can always come back next month and say, hey, we need you for the whole city. But we can take a cautious approach at town center and see how this, the city can see how it goes. And then maybe it should be opened up more, or maybe it's best just leave it for town center. That's just my thoughts about.
So do we have a motion?
Mr. Broughton brought up a very good point, but I was just thinking a more limited approach may be a good first step. So.
Do we have a motion?
I move to forward to the city commission the proposed amendments with the discussed change. Well, I'm not recommending changes. They're discussed changes that Mr. Vos suggested, script, or how would you say that? The changes to the language that you just made. Is that acceptable?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Okay. To the Cocoa Beach Code Land Development Code with a recommendation of approval.
Do we have a second?
Just for clarification of that motion, I did not have the qualification of it applying only within the Town Center Redevelopment District in the language I just said. If that were your motion, then I would just add to the beginning of it with respect to something to this effect, with respect to property within the Town Center Redevelopment District,
Okay.
the whole thing. So would you like to limit it just to Town Center for the time being?
With respect to the Town Center District, I move to forward to the City Commission the proposed amendments with the discussed changes to this Cocoa Beach Code Land Development Code recommendation of approval. Is that good? Okay.
We have a second?
Second that.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Do we have any public comment? We had
We
some
had some
already, but,
I didn't see anybody's hands up.
all right, very good.
Okay, thank you.
I'll provide you the exact
Updated
language.
statements?
Yeah.
Okay, and then the next was a general discussion regarding the earlier watercraft regulations that we had.
Yeah, so this item was presented previously in August at the planning board, and we had some questions. There were some questions that were given to the city attorney, and they provided the legal opinion on our regulatory ability. And given the recent staffing changes, this was something that Randy and Christy were working on before they left that I'm not part of. So the recent staffing and board changings, I'd just like to request to open the floor for discussion again to clarify the intent of the watercraft regulations, so that if I were to proceed with this, that I would be doing so in the correct way, as in what you guys are intending.
So to let the two, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
For the two new members, so this is actually something that I brought forward previously when I was on voting member. I guess I'm a voting member tonight. But anyways, this is based on community observations and talking to people that, as you know, Airbnbs proper, the houses have largely really sprung up everywhere. And there's a lot that are on waterfront property. So the second observation that's been made by me and other members of the community is that now the Airbnbs are pairing various vessel rentals to rent, it could be pontoon boats or jet skis or, powered watercraft. So the thought is that, we have an opportunity here. This is not a massive problem like Airbnbs yet, but here's an opportunity where maybe we can get ahead of the issue by putting in some good regulations. So as more and more of these happen, which I am sure it's guaranteed there's going to be more and more of these vessel rentals happening by Airbnb properties, that there is a framework of regulations in place that they have to conform to. And the reason for it is, number one, the environment. We want to make sure we protect our environment and, the quality of life, the residents in surrounding areas. So the attorney, the Bose Law Firm came up, we all discussed this, and we came up with this list of ideas, I guess, of what potentially could be put into place. So the purpose of the discussion, like I said, is provide them with guidance on, I think at this point it'd be more maybe drafting an ordinance potentially for the city commission to consider. I guess the ordinance would come back to us first for review. And then if we were to approve that ordinance, it would go to the city commission for approval. So that's the background gist, and that's why this has come back forward.
Chair. Orson actually framed it up really well, because he got right into what I was going to suggest when we start talking about these things that we focus on is when we get into broad topics like this, it's a really good idea to zero in on what problem are we trying to solve, okay? Because if we were to just let ourselves go with, oh, hey, boats, let's come up with a whole bunch of rules on boats. One thing that may not be immediately apparent is kind of implicit or nascent in like the first paragraph of Becky's memo on this. But I will tell you, and I'll probably say it a couple times in this conversation, there is a lot of preemption by the state, not on the particular issue like we have with vacation rentals, and so not on the particular issue of these boat rentals that look a lot like an Airbnb type thing or anything like that, but generally when it comes to vessels, navigation, all these things, there's a lot of preemption, a lot of restrictions on what local governments can do, because a lot of those, the power to regulate is actually with FWC, with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, okay? And what I was going to suggest is kind of whatever the conceptual direction that comes out of any of this, one of the steps in the evaluation process I would recommend would be we're going to be running it up the flagpole with the appropriate folks at FWC to say, hey, do you guys think, because we can read the preemption statute too, but some are really vague, and see if they think it crosses any lines, and we can sort that out and report back. Just keep that in mind. One other thing, just to let you all know, based on conversations both Becky and I had, I actually invited Commissioner Capizzi to come tonight. We had spoken about this extensively, just the topic of this and so on. And he agreed to come, and he is an extensive resource as well when it comes to boating and all of this. So I asked him to come, and he may be available to provide some insight in the course of your discussions.
So you need guidance, just to make sure clear, and so I'm clear, the goal is that we need to give guidance to city staff and you on potentially drafting an ordinance based on what we see here, but you then will go to FWC and make sure FWC says, yes, this is.
Yeah, we don't think that's out of bounds.
Right, so that'd be the next step. So it would go from you to doing it, then FWC would take a quick look, and then you would come back with it, and then it'd be an actual ordinance that FWC said. We largely agree with what you're doing here, and then the city commission then would vote on what that is. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on the whole process.
The FWC communications at this point, or point subsequent to this, would be informal at that point, just to see if we're stepping on any toes or anything like that. There actually are it's not any of the types of regulations you all are looking at. There actually is a formal process where certain ordinances that a city or a county may pass can only go into effect after they pass it and submit it to FWC for them to formally approve. That's not within these here. That's more when you're establishing no wake zones and minimum wake zones and so on, which is not something directly y'all are talking about here. But so from the direction here of, what problem we're trying to solve, what sort of things, what sort of regulations might we want to put in to solve that problem, and then when we frame it up a little bit, we chat informally with FWC and report back before we go any further.
I think number 8 is pretty significant. Vessel rental operations are prohibited from canal front homes, vacation rental properties zoned for residential. What is Bert Harris claims?
All right, so two things, and actually the qualification I was going to jump in on a different subject I'll give in a second here, not to confuse the issue. So first thing with regard to 8 there, keep in mind that sentence there, or that phrase there, it's a sentence, that sentence there is really broadly framed. And actually, when you really think through all the things, that encompasses a number of scenarios, some of which are squarely what you're talking about, some of them may not. So I would suggest further discussion on precisely what we're talking about there, okay? What Bert Harris claims are, and this is very important for you all to have a deep appreciation of. So there is a statute called the Bert J. Harris Act, and it is a statute that was put in first back in the 90s. It provides for the recovery of damages against a city or county when when a new regulation imposed by a local government substantially negatively impacts the value of a piece of property. Okay? And that can take the form of, if it was some use the property was being put to in the past and now you've stopped that use, and it would result in a diminution of value that would be shown in an appraisal or what have you, or you're otherwise depriving property rights, then they have the opportunity to potentially come and sue the city. All right? It's meant to be something less than a complete taking. Okay, it's meant to cover situations where it's less than the government has come in and said you can't use your property for any purpose at all, or, you know, appropriated the property to their own use, like eminent domain or inverse condemnation, something like this, but where they have restricted your property rights such that it impairs its value based on a reasonable expectation of that property owner. That's where that can give rise to. But in practical terms, what that's talking about there is we would need to think through it strongly if we thought that there were situations where folks were making lots of money off of doing you know, boat rentals in the way that these Airbnb boat rental, I use that, I don't know what the name of the, you know, these different companies are. That is a situation we would need to be cognizant of. Now, depending on what we think, you know, what the footprint is out there right now of how many there are, it may be the type of thing where it's not been fully fleshed out such that people would have the expectation that they could do that. So that's just meant there to be a caution that we might look at it and say, all right, we can come up with regulations to regulate it or prohibit it or whatever, but keep in mind in one instance or 7 instances or whatever, it's possible the city might get a lawsuit.
Well, because it seems to me, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, it's not, you're not putting regulations on and imposing regulations for the betterment of the community. You're prohibiting. I mean, is that really what that, because it says, are prohibited, you're prohibited from renting boats.
Very often the prohibiting things is a regulation for the benefit of the public. It might be to the detriment of the individual property owner.
What's allowed right now on
Yeah.
a residential home?
In
Can you
residential
run,
homes,
operate,
aside from
there are
Airbnb.
15 pontoon boats by my house?
Yeah. Aside from Airbnb, if I own a home on the canal, he does too. Can I just start up Orson Tarver's boat rental operation?
So it's, and again, we want to get really particular. Different factual scenarios can pop out of this, and actually I would welcome the commissioner to pop up with his, because I was not even thinking down the line of some additional insight I'd gathered there. But let's imagine, yeah, you had in your backyard a situation where you say, hey, everybody come over to my house and I'll charge whatever, and you can, you know, rent out a bunch of pontoon boats out of their backyard onto canal and so on. That is a situation that, quite frankly, well, hold on, let me back up, because you got to remember the tape's running here, so I don't want to say anything, you know, off page. The fact pattern, as I understand it generally, is there are these, very similar to Airbnb, there are these apps where you can put a given boat, right, up and make it available, you know, next Tuesday. You can come over.
I have a boat. I could put it on the app right now.
Right, exactly. And then they can come over and they get the boat and they take it out and so on. Whether that, as it is currently, all right, without any regulation change at all, violates any of our current codes, I'd need to sit, and that is an evaluation we have not done deeply. We need to sit and evaluate whether or not that would violate our current codes. And keep in mind, we did have the legislature just a couple years ago substantially fool with our ability to regulate any sort of home-based business. okay? And it did not necessarily mean that you can't have a home-based business that where you can prohibit all people from coming to the house, all right? In a lot of instances, you can have people come to the house. It really gets more to volume and all of this. So can they do it currently? I don't have a clear answer for you because we haven't sat down and evaluated that particular one. And it may end up, our answer may be different under current regulations for a single boat come over next Tuesday and take it out versus setting up in a big backyard on a, on a canal or what have you, 30 different ones, and you've got everybody in the world coming through the door.
Code only allows up to 5 vessels at a residential.
I think it's
Commissioner, why don't you come on up? Yeah, this is.
Keith Capizzi, I am vice mayor, but I am acting as a resident, and just for transparency, I will not be able to vote if this does come to commission because I do have a conflict of interest. I do rent a vessel from the back of my house. So this is something that I've researched very extensively. I have a lot of information on this. There's different types of rentals. There's bareboat charters, which is basically what you guys are talking about. And then you also have just regular charters, which is a OUPV or uninspected passenger for hire vessel. Legally, I could do either one. I'm licensed to run basically small ships. But that is a Coast Guard license that has nothing to do with a boat rental. So with your boat rental issues, one of the main things I see is what are you guys trying to do with these regulations? Are you trying to hurt small business or trying to keep people from being able to make a little extra money out of their backyard? Or are you trying to solve a greater issue of having people respect the waterways, not fly by with jet skis and making a wake? That being said, why would you create more regulation instead of just policing the regulation we already have? So if you're going to make all this regulation, you're going to have somebody police all this. But right now, the problem is you have people that are going fast in the no wake zones. That's your main issue, I would assume. Because who cares? What does it matter if you have 5 people go by your house in a day or 10? They're allowed to use the waterways. They can be coming from Merritt Island, they can be coming from Cape Canaveral, they come from Satellite. Your issue right now, I'm in the water at least 3-4 times a week, easy, with my boat. The majority of your problems are coming from Marker 24 Marina, which is a boat rental area. They do a Freedom Boat Club. So what you've got coming on is people are coming across the river because we're the closest area. They got the channel that goes literally straight from Marker 24, straight down Houseboat Cut. All I see is their pontoon boats and their rental boats. And I know it's them because half the time they're getting stuck in the flats and they're driving around our canals with their motors half up because they don't know where they can go, what they can do. They don't know what they're doing. This regulations that you guys are trying to impose are not going to solve any of your actual problems because the people that are renting their boats in their backyard now, there's 2 boats in Cocoa Beach that are on the rental sites. You've got a John boat and you've got a pontoon boat, which I believe is 4 houses down from you behind an Airbnb. Mm-hmm. Those are only 2 boats other than my 52-foot yacht. So the issues that you guys have with some of this stuff is displaying the rental company name and phone number and vessel. I don't do it because I feel like, maybe people don't want to see me flying a rental flag behind my boat, but honestly, I wouldn't mind. That's great because then I'll have more business and I'll have more exposure. So if you guys want to require people to have signs, and phone numbers on the side of their boat so people can call. Think about that. The display the registration decal on the port side, that's not saying that there's no registration on both sides. The registration decal is an actual sticker that says it is up to date. So you can see what boat is on either side. You could write their decal, it's on either side. It's just the year decal is only on one side. The rental operators submit their vessel registration, ID, and insurance information on an annual basis to City Hall. That's a good idea. I think I mean, you guys should know who's on the water if they are renting and that they have insurance. Each vessel should have a waterproof chart showing the channels and no wake zones. That's not a bad idea either, because these people do not know where they're going. They're exploring. Only permitted from sunup to sundown. I don't see what's the big deal. That doesn't make sense to me. Jet ski and air-cooled two-stroke engines are prohibited. Honestly, they are a problem, but they're also a problem with residents as well. So again, that goes back to policing. You guys, if you're not going to have police on the water, then who cares whether it's a two-stroke engine or a pontoon boat or a yacht? It makes no sense to regulate that. Picking up or dropping off passengers or delivering to rental boats to any city managed boat ramp. You're not allowed to do that anyways with a business, so I don't know if you would necessarily call a boat rental a business, but that's already in your code. Vessel rentals, and besides, I just looked at this. I really didn't go into it extensively. I just got it from her, but just going through it quickly, these are all the issues I see. Vessel operations are prohibited from canal front homes. That's ridiculous. You're not gonna let people rent stuff from the back of their house because you're afraid they're gonna make wakes. You gotta impose your current laws on stuff. Fees. There was something I saw about insurance. Require insurance from a what was it a
Domestic, not a foreign.
That's not gonna work. You can't get insurance from a domestic company. For my boat, I can only go from Lloyd's of London. So if that was the case, I couldn't get insurance.
I could offer you, so what happened in the reason for that was in the Panhandle, they had a pontoon boat rental company that realized that if they got an overseas insurance provider, the homeowners who were trying to make claims for damage, the overseas was like impossible to even work with. And then basically the overseas was like, well, you can try to sue us in court or something. And so that was, I just only give you the background because that was an issue that they had in the Panhandle, that people could not get any type of due process or anything to address damages that were done to their places. So
currently,
just so you know.
Currently with a bareboat charter, so it's also called a livery, which a bareboat charter is designated under U.S. Coast Guard regulations. That's what they call it. FWC doesn't recognize bareboat charter terminology. They call it a livery, which is basically the same exact thing, but they both have their own set of rules and regulations. So the Coast Guard requires you to have, your insurance and certain things, and there's different regulations there. But FWC then has their additional regulations as well. So one of those regulations is that you must have $1 million of liability insurance in order to operate. So that's one of the regulations that, it's kind of, it doesn't matter. We have to have it if we're going to do it. So
They had insurance, I'm just saying, they had insurance.
right. But, insurance, you got to go with what you can get. It's the same as like Citizens or whatever. Like if we had no other choice, we have to go with Citizens. So it's, that's just some of the things to think about. And I can't remember if there was anything else, but if you have any questions.
So what I remembered when we had the earlier discussion, I thought it was more about having an Airbnb and then somebody saying, oh, by the way, I have jet skis or whatever, all these vehicles that while you're here, you can use them. and they have no training, they have no, because if it's a rental, reputable rental, registered.
Well, yeah,
insurance,
that's the thing is-
They give them sort of the rules of the road, make sure they're set up and they have the right safety equipment, whatever. And if it's an Airbnb and the person who owns the Airbnb and the vehicle, maybe, they're nowhere to be found around, and they
that's
come in and they
that's
jump
it.
in and they, do what they're gonna do.
Excellent
And I thought
point.
that's what it was supposed to
They-
target.
They
Ahead
can,
of the issue, because this is something that is, like, as Commissioner Capizzi pointed out, just like how Airbnb started out. We probably started out with 5 or 10,
Right.
and we went to
Sort of like
11.
Airbnb, but for the
1100.
vehicles that happen to be in the back of the.
this is an excellent point.
And
So,
if I
to
just
your
make one more-
point,
Could I just make one more point?
Yeah, go ahead.
To address, so it's about, we're trying to get ahead of the issue, because what happened to Airbnbs, we saw how it blew up and it became, and as you can imagine, 1 or 2 Airbnbs probably didn't generate a lot of complaints,
Right.
1,100 or more. So the thought process is now, not saying we're gonna have 1,100 boat rentals, but there's a decent amount of Airbnbs, if you look at the maps, are waterfront, that I would imagine this will grow over time. And, one of the things that, that we saw with another boat rental operation that was eventually was operating illegal and shut down, is the police department couldn't staff the waterways to stop. Ted's probably going to talk about this. The police department and our former police chief said, our police chief that's currently suspended or something. I don't want to say former, maybe coming back. He was just like, Orson, Ted, he's like, we will never be able to enforce the laws. Like, we can't have a police boat around every mangrove island peeking around. And honestly, even though everyone was doing a very good job of reporting the issues, it was almost impossible for the police to ever actually catch a violation in the act of happening and actually write a ticket to that person. So the thought process is we put these regulations in so that as this thing grows, the city will have tools at their disposal to deal with or regulate or handle these issues, instead of it becoming like Airbnb, where it's completely just a wide open. So that's just in the footing.
Yeah, so I understand that was the problem we're trying to address. And then when we left, I thought we said that the identification was really about how somebody who was trying to identify that this was not a rental company's vehicle or vessel, and it was a Airbnb vessel, that was part of the how do we enabling.
that would be a good idea.
Enabling language to identify with some kind of marking. This isn't a regular rental companies. This is somebody who's just taken it out of the backyard at an Airbnb, and so that you could at least see and know that they've had some kind of,
So to your point, an Airbnb can just say, here, use my boat, use my jet ski, and that doesn't do anything for what you're trying to do, Orson. And I know what you're trying to do, but the thing is,
We can't solve every problem. We can't fix every problem.
So
Right.
my concern is you're gonna put regulation to hinder small businesses because you don't want to see people having wakes in your backyard. But let me just say, they can just say, use my stuff, and they just charge more for their Airbnb.
Right.
So that's one of the problems. But another thing is, paddlecraft is considered a livery. Yeah, and I showed these guys here. So are you going to regulate? The paddleboard companies, or
We're just dealing with particular, but also it's not about hindering small business. Keith, I hope you understand it's not about hindering. It's about the reason why we have regulations on any business, whether it's a restaurant or a parking garage. Why there are regulations is so that it fits so within the community reasonably that it doesn't impact the quality of life. So it's not to hinder. It's about ensuring a general quality of life for everyone. That businesses have a framework of regulations that they abide by. That's what we're.
So what is your objective? What's your goal?
I stated it earlier. I stated earlier, it's to put in a framework of regulations.
No, why? Why? What is the reason behind your goal?
So that as these things start to increase, which they will, I'm sure they will, right? Airbnb has increased over time. Yeah. There's a framework of regulation so it doesn't have a negative impact on the community and the environment.
And what is a negative impact?
Maybe some more public comment. I'm sure Ted will speak to the impact that vessel rentals have had because he lived it I'd rather, I don't know, Ted, if you're going to speak, I'll let you speak to the impact on the environment, because he well documented it.
Okay.
And so, just so you don't hear from me.
If you're saying the negative impact is people driving by your house too fast, that's not a boat regulation issue. That's an enforcement issue. So I'll just put that out there.
Yeah.
And we did talk about that, like what specifically, what vehicles are we talking about, what vessels, like define them? How would you enforce them? You know, what would be the proposed enforcement if that?
Well, if it's an ordinance like this, it would be enforced like any other
Yeah, code
ordinance that through
enforcement.
code
But
enforcement.
how could they know this is the vehicle we're talking about versus everybody's vehicle on the water?
Well, then that's what the purpose of the regulation. Look, there's some people who will absolutely, Ted will tell you about it, will absolutely flaunt the law, and they will not.
Yeah, I'm not arguing we shouldn't do it or anything. I'm just
Oh, no,
saying
I'm just
that was
there's always gonna be
the,
bad actors who
that
are
was
gonna-
kind of how we left it, is come back with enabling language, taking all these things into consideration. The definition of what a vehicle means, what vessels we're talking about, addressing how that works, if it affects any markings or regulations or registration, or how does it work, and what is the enabling language, and where does it belong? Because it's not a code thing, it's a, you know, it's an operational kind of thing.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to see if I was hearing what I thought I was hearing, and tell me if what I think I'm hearing is too narrow, and would, you know, add on to what I say here. Talked a lot about folks having jet skis or other boats that are with a vacation rental, all right, that are with an Airbnb or what have you, and nobody there to make sure they know the rules of the road, teach them how to do it, all the stuff you would typically, you know, presume to get at a proper marina or anything like that. That just say, hey, as part of your vacation rental, you can take out my jet skis and this and that and so on. Is that the primary issue we're drilling down on? And if so, it sounds like this would be just an additional species of vacation rental regulation. Okay, so that's fine. Directed to motorized vessels, presumably motorized. I don't think we're overly concerned about paddleboards coming from an Airbnb or anything, or a kayak. Yeah. You're right, and that's what I'm trying to get all the details here. So motorized vessels originating from a vacation rental, is that the gravamen of where the concern lies? Or is it, in addition to motorized vessels originating from a vacation rental as part of the vacation rental package, is there also an additional segment of concern?
So I'll say, my original, going back in time, when we first discussed this, I thought you had said that Orson Tarver's boat rental business was not permitted under the current code. I couldn't open up Orson Tarver's boat rental, behind my house.
Mm-hmm.
And the discussion we had, you said, but Airbnb is different. This is an Airbnb where there are guests who are paying money to stay and adding this on. So we kind of went down the path of how do we regulate a boat rental operation or whatever that's tied to the Airbnb. That's where we and that's how we ended up, I think, here. So that's what I'm just saying, but it sounds like what you're saying is actually, that may not be the cut and dry thing I just said earlier, right?
Yeah, and I'm trying to, this was a while back.
This was-
I'm trying to
yeah,
remember
this
if it
was
was
a while,
me,
and that's you, I'm
and
sorry.
and what I may have, what we may have chatted about before.
Or it may have been Randy Stevenson who was talking at the podium who said, maybe you wasn't you, maybe it was Randy who articulated that, no, you couldn't open up a boat rental operation behind I couldn't go into business for myself.
Yeah, and what is a boat rental operation is a matter of scale as well.
What's stopped me as the owner of the Airbnb to charge you $4,000 a week for the house and say, you know what, I like you. You can use my boat and my jet ski. So you're not renting anything. And I talked about this when we first talked. It's very hard to enforce, and it's very hard to determine if someone's actually renting it.
This is something I was going to throw out to you. If the let's assume for a second our discussion is targeted just at vacation rentals, right? Because we have very clear definition of that in the state statute and our regulations, all this stuff. We have use of motorized vessels originating from a vacation rental, regardless if they're paying extra money for it, regardless if it's part of the package or just, hey, I like you, right? Put all that aside. Forget about rent, forget about whatever, all right? We regulate all manner of other things relating to activities, at or originating, from a vacation rental. This would just be another one. It would be motorized vehicles originating from there. Now, keep in mind, just based on comments we've heard thus far and additional comments you'll hear, what problems are we solving versus are there going to be other problems coming in from the marina across the way or what have you that we have no control over whatsoever? I'm sorry to interrupt.
You can regulate, and I think it's a good idea to have boats registered, to have insurance, file on file with all of that stuff. But you can't regulate if somebody's an idiot when they're behind the wheel of a boat or a jet ski. How do you regulate that?
Well, there's all manner of regulation of that. We have all manner of boating laws that are all put out by FWC and so on. The issue, as you heard, is enforcement.
Right.
Yeah, and when it comes to actual behavior on the waterways, that's pretty much out of bounds for any regulation the city can do anyways. It really comes down to enforcement with regard to that.
And I think, like he said, that it's no different than anybody else's on the water that's driving crazy or something. They can enforce it. But I think the point was, is there a way to know whether it was somebody's, it was part of a rental? I don't know if it even matters at that
That's
point.
the purpose of the regulation, so that if we have regulations in place, issues can be identified. And,
Yeah, I just meant how would they know? How would they know the difference between I'm taking out my own on the water and driving crazy versus some Airbnb person that's on theirs?
That's why we're thinking about like labeling and.
Right.
They can use their own boat for their friends also, even if it's a rental. So if you label it, I mean, but they're not going to be stupid in their own boat. So maybe not.
And just,
Yeah.
but those were the topics.
I mean,
we were talking.
yeah, I mean.
I don't know, so where do we go from here?
Yeah, so.
I just think that what Wade said in terms of it being a part, maybe something that we can do with the city is making it a part of the vacation rental package, just making sure that they're making those people aware of the safety factors. Right now, we have them do a handout for other things within the vacation rental package, because as you start talking about vehicles or motorized vehicles, we also could be a car there. It could be a golf cart there as we open up that. So having them to include a part, what items that they're going to allow their guests to use and what type of safety information that they're giving out with those vessels is probably could be added to our vacation rental code.
And, maybe we should let Ted speak to, I know he came here to speak about the impact of vessel rentals can have. Ted, am I putting you on your spot or?
Okay, that's
So maybe
fine.
give him an
You wanna
opportunity to
come up
talk,
and
'cause he literally, him and his neighbors lived it for quite some time. Background information, there's a vessel rental operation that's completely operating illegally. And
Business there, yeah.
Yeah, and it's shut down now, but, this is, and also some of the things that, sorry Ted for being such prefacing your comments, but it is something that I had thought about, that like, if this begins to multiply across, potentially will we experience what we will share with you today. So anyways, sorry Ted, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Ted Baldwin. I live at 191 Seminole Lane. We're in a condominium, and most condominiums around here have already changed their bylaws and stuff such that Airbnb isn't our main problem. So I disagree that this is only applicable to Airbnb. It is applicable to me and some of my colleagues that we had an incident at Manatee Lane with a business that was operating illegally. They didn't have appropriate special exception and didn't have the proper permits from Fish and Wildlife Commission. This was in 2021, and they were renting pontoon boats and jet skis out of their business illegally, and they lost a special exception here in March of 2021, And it took the city 5 months to shut them down because they could not enforce the special exception without using Robin or the police. And the police, like Orson said, they don't have time to mess with this kind of stuff, and I don't want to bother the police. And Robin, the code enforcement guy, has to see it with his own eyes. So some of these things in here, which I think are important to prevent things that happened before, items 1, 3, 4, and 5, regulations applicable to anybody that's renting a boat from the city of Cocoa Beach. I think those are good ideas. I think all the things are good ideas, but I'm not going to get into what's legal or not. But it's more than just Airbnbs. It is also the condos. And I ask Airbnbs get all the attention. As soon as there's a problem in Airbnb, the city jumps and makes new noise ordinances, things like that. Please also consider us condo people, because it disturbed us quite a bit. And a lot of noise. Wasn't so much, I mean, the wakes hurt because my condo, which is just south of the boat rental, has natural shoreline, and we experience a lot of wake erosion from that shoreline because of these boats. And they would come up and down, they would come out for a test run and then go back, and then the people go out. So it was every boat they rented, and they had 6 pontoon boats, was 4 trips a day past our condo, and we saw a lot of erosion on our shoreline. It's like night and day. When they were operating in now, I can go enjoy the sunset outside, and there's not a lot of boats going by. Before, it was like boats going by 6 times coming home at sunset. So I just ask, please consider the condos, don't say only Airbnbs. Thank you.
Sir? Sir? Yes. I just had a question real quick, just to help them frame up the thinking here. I think the discussion with regard to Airbnbs versus condos, I don't think it was not considering the negative impacts on condos. Mm-hmm. I think it was they're trying to look for areas where there may be a potential for it being a source of a problem.
Yeah, understand.
Yeah.
There's more than one source of the problem.
Well, and that's what I just want to ask you real quick, if you had any thoughts, because as you know, I'm very familiar with the situation that you dealt with there. That whole situation was itself illegal. Okay, yes. So it's unfortunately the problem with folks who are just bad actors and are just going to violate all the rules. You can make double the amount of rules, and it just makes it double illegal and still illegal. Are there any particular regulations that you would have a suggestion on to the board that isn't illegal right now that you think would solve a problem or anything?
I think having the vessel on the side so they could be easily identified as to what it is. What a lot of us used to do, we couldn't see the Florida registration number from our balconies unless you used binoculars. So you could take a picture of the boat, but you couldn't take a picture of the Florida registration number in general. So having it, number one, is very important. Number two, vessel registration, vessel IDs, and insurance information. That's so that the city has, that's number three, so that the city has that information readily available for anyone operating in their city, and they don't have to go try to find out, like Robin had to go find out, okay, which 6 boats is it that are the pontoon boats that are in violation? So he'd know that already. We told him what they were because we knew what they were. So they know that already. The charts are good. People run underground all the time, especially behind the Publix over there where there's a big U-turn. They would run aground all the time. So if you had charts, that would maybe help people, the rental people, not the illegal operators, but the people that are renting the boats. That'll maybe help.
Just real quick on your note, can you require them to maybe have a GPS on their vehicle? Because that's
Wish.
Sort of thing, because they don't know where they are.
Right.
Even with the chart, they're gonna.
Well, the illegal operator claimed that he had GPS on there and he could tell if they were going out of the channel or not. That just wasn't true. For the driver.
So they would know where they are on that chart.
Yeah, okay, no.
Just for the purposes of discussion here, I can answer that. One thing that is preempted, and the requiring a laminated chart is kind of on the line. This would be one of the ones I would ask FWC about, because I got an argument the other way. But requiring GPS in a boat runs directly contrary to one of the preemptions. It basically says only FWC can mandate minimum required equipment within the boat, and local governments can't add on more. The counter argument, particularly for the purposes of the vacation rentals, is we can regulate all manner of stuff that vacation rentals are required to provide as information to folks and so on. So I feel fairly comfortable we could require them to provide a laminated, chart or something like that. But in any event, to that, we'd be right out on that. So thank you, sir. I just wanted to drill down on that a little bit more.
And real quick, too, I just want to say, I agree with a lot of the stuff he said, the 1, 3, 4. The number 5, the sun up, the sun down, just be aware that, obviously during the bioluminescent seasons, a lot of people want to get out on the water and see that, so.
And they still can, right, on paddle boards and kayaks and stuff?
Yeah, but I mean, obviously you need to.
Just making sure, yeah.
Be smart. Do stuff.
I think that was what we're thinking about was for noise and because I think the concern is as as Airbnbs, you end up with more and more of the party houses and things. So I think that's what was driving to try to keep it to a daytime thing where instead of potentially going through evening hours. I mean, because my boat, I have 8 12-inch speakers on my boat. If I was renting that out, you could crank it all night long, and if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So I think that's just what we're thinking about the time frame.
So, and then also what I've noticed, like I said, I'm on the water at least 4 times a week, probably at least. And, he's probably seen me come by probably quite a few times. And, I've never had a complaint. I've been renting boats for 10 years. So I try to be respectful. I drive slow every time I go by. I make sure I tell everybody we need to keep the music down when we're now around people. They don't always listen, but I try to make sure that happens. But the major offenders that I notice are not individuals renting boats. It's the companies that have too many boats to manage. So like the Marker 24 has probably at least 20 boats there. The Wildlife Water Sports had 6 vehicles. They got a kid renting out these things, but they don't really care about the enforcement of it or telling them exactly, what they should or shouldn't do, because they're just trying to get the stuff out the door. So the people that are renting this stuff personally, I think, take much greater care, and they care a whole lot more about what happens, because that's their only little gig. They don't want to mess it up.
And and your license is at risk, right? If you were blasting, you're a Coast Guard captain, so if you were blasting through the canals and.
So for me, so that's another thing. A bareboat charter, they do not require you to have a licensed captain drive the vessel. So, but for me, because I care and that's what I'm doing, I'm a licensed captain, and I'm not gonna jeopardize that.
Should we just ask if there's any more public comment? There's 2 more people out here before.
So maybe you can
Are
answer.
any other public comments?
Okay.
So what's technically allowed right now for rentals behind the condos or residential neighborhoods? Like, how many boats did somebody rent out?
That was what I was punting on before. I need to go back and analyze that particular question in the context of our home occupation regulations and so on.
We're really talking about the canals, because the city.
The residential neighborhood.
The river, that's different.
Yeah,
So we're really talking about the canals.
Here's the thing. Really, where we need to be talking, if you put your mind in the right place, is technically activity, for the most part, activities that actually take place on land. Okay? What I mean by that is the renting or giving out of a vessel, of a motorized vessel, or certain things like this, or affixing certain additional information, turning in additional information to the city, and so on. Actually regulating activities on the canal versus activities on the river is a false distinction. In both instances, it's on the water, and it's FWC that controls the activities on the water. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's the mere fact that a a piece of water, whether it's canal or part of the river right near and so on, happens to be within the geographic limits of the city when you look on a map, it does not mean that we have regulatory authority, okay, over activities on the water. Now, with that framework, right, this will help explain the next thing I was going to say is put in all manner of regulations. Say we have a regulation, say, renter operations, only permitted sun up to sundown 7 days a week. Let's just say that. That would be rental operations originating in the city of Cocoa Beach. It would have no control over a facility sitting one block outside the city or across the river or what have you, trooping across the river, coming into the canals, going around at 2 a.m. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So what we're talking about conceptually is really activities originating on land. Folks coming across the water from other places and tooling around in the canals, not something we can regulate.
So the big picture, as you're saying, is actually really, as a city, we have to decide if we're okay with boat rentals originating from the residential houses that are on canals in the residential district. Is essentially really the heart of the question.
Yeah.
Whether it's an Airbnb or a private residence, as a city, as a community, do we want to allow that? And if we do, because right now we don't even know, it may be allowed, actually. At first we thought it wasn't allowed, but actually.
Yeah, the more I'm thinking of it as I sit here, I don't have a clear answer for you. And that's the most appropriate answer I can give you. I need to go look and see how I would evaluate it when we put it to the test. And frankly, need to run through a couple different hypothetical scenarios.
So I think, what I'm only going to this point is like, maybe it'd be best to find out that answer, aside from Airbnbs or private residences. Let's just find out that one answer. And if the answer is yes, then we have to decide, should we put any regulations around it? Should we prohibit it? Should we have regulations around it? As a community, what do we want for our community and our quality of life? Is really then the next question we have to answer after he would come back with his response. I mean, I think it'd be interesting to see what do residents think. I mean,
So is that, that was going to be the proposal, is bring back next time. I mean, clearly we had to have this discussion because everybody was on different page.
Yeah, that's why,
I think enforcement's going to be a big issue is one thing, and then, we don't need to hurt the small guys renting one boat out. But again, like the water sports, I don't want somebody on the canal renting out 15 boats.
We can have up to 5.
Also.
But I do think.
As Keith said, 5 would be the
there's a
limit.
You're only
Well-
allowed to have 5 boats in your backyard, and I actually think you're only allowed to rent 2 boats from your residence, I believe.
Okay.
I don't think we know that answer.
And
The next
yeah, I
time
just
we
don't
can-
know. Do we have a particular regulation to that point?
I thought I read it was 2,
All right.
but.
This is why
So I think the
when it
next
comes to that, we need to
discussion
drill
would
down
be
on the weeds on
what is on the books now. That's like the next thing is, now that we've had this discussion, what exactly is allowed now? And if there's, and then we can decide if anything.
It's supported by the residential zoning
Right.
district, because that's different than wildlife water sports was zoned commercial, which would. which
That
would
was
be
a whole different animal.
That's a whole different thing, so we're really talking about the residential,
Yeah, but of course, as I said, don't forget the other people.
or the condos, yeah.
We're multifamily residential.
Okay, so multifamily,
FWC does regulate the commercial businesses, and in the case of wildlife water sports, once they got their permit, they were allowed to have 2 motorized watercraft. It's based on the length of shoreline that you have.
gotcha.
And so, not that we can do about the FWC regulations, as you said, they're allowed to have 2, but if they violate it, let's be able to enforce it.
Now, if you call the Coast Guard and they're found to be doing something illegal to the Coast Guard, I think they take it a lot more serious, and they would actually sit and wait to catch them. So, Coast Guard and FWC, I think, is a little different. FWC is they control, but Coast Guard is willing to drill down. So, just so you guys know, you might not have been talking to the right person. So, like I said, enforcement is your main thing. You're really, I mean, to your point, I understand you don't want to see more boats going past you, but at the end of the day, this is everybody's water. Like, you can't just say, I don't like seeing more people in my backyard.
I don't think we ever said that, Keith.
No.
Has anyone, I don't think we said.
I see like 6 boats and I don't really want to see that many boats going by or something.
No, he didn't say
We're not
that.
allowed to have any boats on our condos anymore. No condo can get a boat slip to have boats there.
Right.
Because of the Manatee, Brevard County Manatee Protection Laws. But the Brevard County Manatee Protection Laws protect everyone, or enforceable to everyone, the whole city and everywhere in Brevard County, and they regulate based on length of shoreline.
So do you have
I'm
enough?
happy with
I think we need to wrap this.
Yeah, we need to wrap it up. So sorry.
So do we have enough to come back with like the next?
Yeah,
guess
I
it's
think this,
wave?
I think this discussion's actually been
To-
helpful to drill down
To
on.
like have
on
the
a fair
next
bit.
iteration of here's really what we're.
Let's
trying
answer
to
the
do.
question, the overarching question. For the residential, whether it's multifamily or residential, can you even operate a Orson Tarver's boat rentals or Airbnb boat rental LTD or whatever? That's the overarching question we want to answer first. Okay, got it. And then we go from there.
All right, the last,
Sorry,
last one
guys.
was good.
I know,
And the last
I know I
topic
beat
was
that horse.
staff and city attorney reports.
We have one more?
Oh, the last one.
All right, try to keep this one quick for you guys. All right, so this is just the building permit report from Development Services for Q1. You can see it's in your packet here at the end. 683 records created during January through March of the beginning of this year, with 592 permits issued. Brought in about 147 and some change in revenue collected. We started creating a a quarterly comparison. So the one you'll see on the next page goes through Q4 and Q1. See a little bit more permits, records created, a little more inspections done, a little less on the permits being issued. And that could be a variety of reasons. Just waiting on documents, waiting on items before those permits could get issued. Slight drop in revenue collected between the 2 quarters, but again, permits are, the charges are based on evaluation for the project, so it might have just been that there was, less hired projects at that time. And then the third item was requested at the last meeting to talk about our vacation rental registration and kind of where we are status-wise on that. So the data you see here is just talking about our January to March for the first quarter. You'll see it's a small number of 17 records created with about $7,100 in revenue collected. Now, note that this Q1, we had not yet fully implemented the programming with our third party to identify these properties. So this is kind of giving us that baseline of where we're going to be starting. Within the last 3 weeks now, which we're now in Q2, we have assigned a specific staff member to oversee the task. They've been sending out vacation rental notices saying you've been identified as a property, as a potential vacation rental. We need you to be registered if that's true. And out of the 38 letters that she was able to send just recently, 15 of those have already responded and completed registrations. And then we already have 25 new records within the last 3 weeks, so additional 10 on top of the 15 that were identified properties. So hopefully this will just be kind of a good baseline for that first quarter to see where we started with 17 kind of doing it on their own. And then moving forward, we'll be able to watch that number grow and see how successful the implementation of the program has been.
So you have the contractor on board now, or you're still working on the contractor?
I do believe that the contract has been finalized. Ms. McCoy can talk on that.
So, yeah, we had to reevaluate our contractor, and we were able to find a contractor that was substantially less expensive. And in that process, we've gotten to the point at this time where they're ramping us up to start to work through our process and bring our staff on board with the new software program.
All right.
How many people have registered so far?
I'm sorry?
How many
In
rentals? do we
total,
have?
prior to the program, we're about 180. That number fluctuates each day. I think it was like 174 prior to the 15 coming in, so roughly around that from the length of time of us doing the vacation rental registration.
What's our estimate? How many rentals do you think we have?
1,100 roughly is what's the estimate? Was what Randy told us one time. 1,100. What? Go ahead. Sorry. Here we go.
My review of that information, I was able to find out that single-family residential, which is what we are regulating, we have about 2,440 homes. So I'm not anticipating that we're going to have 1,100 of those homes be vacation rentals.
Okay.
So I am thinking, based on what the recent information from my building official, was maybe 1 in 5 could be a vacation rental. So doing that math, I'm thinking about 500.
So the vacation rentals regulations don't apply to like obviously there's apartment buildings where people have bought up an entire apartment building.
Yeah.
So the regulations don't apply to them. So that's just a little background.
It's only in the RS1 district.
Only in the RS1.
So probably about 500.
Probably around 500 from what the building official was able to estimate. But once we get that software package on board, I will be able to give you some real hard numbers as to what we see out there.
Thank you.
It's great. No, it's great. Thank you.
Prior to that, you had about 80 registered prior to implementing all this.
Yeah.
So you went up about 100.
Thank you. Are there a general public left except for you? Have any other gentlemen?
I can't comment on anything else. I'm just giving you that.
Okay, thanks. And any final board comments from anybody?